You ask her, is it really possible to leave the southern regions from the 4 fierce beast-guarded places? This question has always puzzled you. After all, except for the Endless Sea, you've actually left the other fierce beast-guarded places in simulations. But those places are either filled with murderous intent or other dragon tomb. The only slightly better place, the Great Wilderness, doesn't belong to any other domain. Beiruoxu frowns upon hearing your question. After a moment of thought, she tells you that according to records, all 4 fierce beast-guarded places can indeed lead out of the southern regions to other domains. However, she hasn't personally visited all of them. She entered the southern regions through the Endless Sea. Hearing this, you become somewhat skeptical of Beiruoxu's records. Without personal verification, you find it hard to trust. 3 days pass in the blink of an eye, and Beiruoxu leaves. And you finally gain your freedom. Although Beiruoxu didn't make things difficult for you these past few days, she didn't seem to fully trust you either, keeping you bound with a magical artifact. It wasn't until she left that she released you. This situation makes you sigh. This woman is truly fickle. In previous simulations, she even provided resources, took you as a disciple when she saw your talent, and led you to break through the Endless Sea. This time, despite your improved talent and strength, she didn't trust you. But it doesn't matter. After all, you've achieved your goal this time. As long as you've met Beiruoxu, you can use the one-time talent face-to-face at any time. When the day comes that you want to leave the southern regions, you can use this talent to appear directly in front of Beiruoxu. Thinking of this, you can't help but smile. This time, you feel you can freely roam the southern regions. After all, you now have strength and backup plans. What can those immortal slaves do to you? In the 3rd year, you brazenly rob immortal slaves everywhere, even single-handedly robbing several spirit stone mines of the immortal arrival sect. Your spirit stone reserves increase significantly. In the 4th year, your reputation spreads throughout the southern regions, and the cultivators of Spine Mountain seek you out for a powerful alliance. In the 5th year, you arrive at Spine Mountain and help its people set up high-grade gathering spirit arrays. Your talent in Formation Dao amazes the people of Spine Mountain. In the 6th year, you ask coldly to let you admire the formations left by Senior Liu. Your current strength and reputation make coldly hesitate no longer. He takes you there directly. In the 7th year, you find the key place where Senior Liu's formation guides Heavenly Thunder. You set up an inverted thunder conduction formation, guiding the Heavenly Thunder from beneath Spine Mountain. As soon as the underground Heavenly Thunder is drawn out, it strikes at you. You don't hesitate, opening your mouth wide and swallowing it in one gulp. These Heavenly Thunders are all guided by your formation, their power within your calculations and completely within your tolerance. As the Heavenly Thunder enters your body, your Toti Divine Body activates instantly, rapidly refining it. After digesting one bolt of Heavenly Thunder, you frown slightly. The improvement isn't as significant as you imagined. Although your martial Dao has improved somewhat, it doesn't seem as much as when you were struck by lightning and used the Yimu Divine Body to recover. What's going on? Is it because your strength is higher now? You decide to experiment more. If it doesn't work, you'll stop eating and choose to be struck by lightning directly, using the Yimu Divine Body to recover. You continue to consume several bolts of Heavenly Thunder. You feel as if you've gained a different understanding of thunder. It seems you're about to grasp the profound laws of thunder. At this moment, you suddenly remember that the immortal Dao inheritance you obtained mentioned that after reaching the immortal realm, one primarily cultivates laws. Could it be that the Toti Divine Body can help comprehend laws? This possibility excites you. You know that if you can comprehend laws before becoming an immortal, it would be of immense help to you. After all, you know that once someone in the southern regions crosses the tribulation to become an immortal, powerful beings will intervene. If your combat strength isn't strong enough, you wouldn't know how to protect yourself when becoming an immortal. Originally, you planned to enrich yourself during the tribulation crossing stage, filling all your shortcomings before crossing the tribulation to become an immortal. In reality, Jiang Yifeng sees this and silently recites. Start a 10-year deep simulation. Since he can comprehend laws in the simulation, He thinks deep simulation is more worthwhile. Regardless of the origin values consumed, at least it can save reward slot at the end of the simulation. Ding, 10-year deep simulation starts, deducting origin values, remaining origin values. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Yifeng appears in the simulation. He doesn't hesitate and begins to devour the heavenly thunder drawn from underground. As the thunder enters his stomach, he hears a few boom-boom sounds, feeling no discomfort. Simultaneously, a trace of insight about thunder appears in his mind. Although it's just a trace, Jiang Yifeng can already confirm that the Toti divine body can indeed help him comprehend the law of thunder. Thus, he trains even more diligently. Every day, he devours the underground thunder of Spine Mountain without rest. He consumes at least 300 to 500 bolts a day. Such desperate efforts yield significant results. 3 years pass, and Jiang Yifeng feels he's touched the threshold of the law of thunder. He thinks it won't be long before he fully grasps it. By then, he can use the basic law of thunder against enemies, greatly enhancing his combat strength. However, this kind of training also brings a slight side effect to Jiang Yifeng. For instance, his mouth is now a bit black, and his speech is somewhat scorching. But none of this matters. Jiang Yifeng doesn't mind at all. Time passes day by day. 5 more years go by in the blink of an eye. At this point, Jiang Yifeng's comprehension of the law of thunder finally reaches the entry level. This took more time than he originally anticipated. The closer he got to the threshold, the harder it became to improve. Until now, Jiang Yifeng can no longer make any progress. He thinks it might be due to his insufficient strength and the thunder he devoured not being strong enough. However, with such improvement, he is quite satisfied. He doesn't plan to risk devouring thunder beyond his limits. Since he can't further improve the law of thunder, Jiang Yifeng doesn't want to waste the deep simulation time. He turns to study the formation left by Senior Liu Aya. In previous simulations, although he studied it, he didn't fully understand it due to his insufficient formation skills. Now that he is an 8th grade formation master, much improved from before, he is sure to gain new insights this time. Ding, deep simulation ended. 2 years passed quickly. Jiang Yifeng's consciousness returned to reality. He kept savoring the gains from this deep simulation, feeling that he had benefited immensely. This deep simulation not only allowed him to comprehend the law of thunder, entry level, but also significantly improved his formation Dao. He felt that he was now closer to becoming a 9th grade formation master. This made Jiang Yifeng wonder if he should continue with the deep simulation. In the end, he gave up on that option. To improve his formation Dao, he could simulate anytime in the future. But this simulation had the one-time talent face-to-face. This was a crucial talent for survival and escaping the southern regions. Jiang Yifeng felt he couldn't waste it easily and needed to make more attempts. So he continued to look at the simulation panel. You were momentarily dazed, realizing you had lost a segment of your memory. You understood that your real self must have entered the deep simulation. You searched around and indeed found a notebook that said, 10 years have passed. You understood this was a hint left for you. You stared at the formation left by Senior Liu for a long time. You wondered if your current formation skills were enough to repair it alone. After a long time, you concluded that it wasn't possible. After pondering for a moment, you left the formation and found old Li, telling him about the formation's problem. You wanted to try again, to see if the people of Spine Mountain could help resolve the heavenly thunder beneath the formation. Old Li wasn't too surprised by your words, as he had long sensed something was wrong with the formation. He just didn't know what the problem was and didn't dare to act rashly. After hesitating for a moment, he told you that this was a big matter and he couldn't decide alone. He needed to discuss it with the people of Spine Mountain. However, he assured you that he would do his best to facilitate this. At just over 30 years old, you had such strength that old Li fully believed in your talent. He thought you were a peerless chosen like Mo Jingshan and Liu Aya. Since you wanted to repair the formation, old Li was willing to accompany you in trying. A few days later, with old Li's efforts and discussions with many cultivators of Spine Mountain, everyone temporarily agreed with your proposal. Not everyone among them believed your words. But since you proposed it, They wanted you to prove whether there was indeed a problem with the formation. Naturally, you had no reason to refuse. After all, proving it wasn't difficult as long as they didn't obstruct you. You led Old Lee and the cultivators of Spine Mountain into the formation left by Luaya. You found the location of the underground Heavenly Thunder and began setting up an inverted thunder conduction formation. The people of Spine Mountain were nervous but didn't stop you. This made you sigh, realizing that many problems couldn't be solved simply due to a lack of strength. In previous simulations, whenever you proposed tampering with the formation, the cultivators of Spine Mountain would outright refuse. They were even wary of you, not allowing you to approach the formation again. But this time, with the same issue, they chose to observe because you were stronger. Soon, the thunder conduction formation was set up. Bolts of heavenly thunder surged from the ground. This shocked the people of Spine Mountain. They hadn't expected there to be heavenly thunder underground. In their days, you shouted for everyone to adjust their states and absorb the heavenly thunder. You told them that if the heavenly thunder beneath the ground wasn't cleared, the formation left by Senior Luaya wouldn't last long. Hearing this, the people of Spine Mountain rushed towards the heavenly thunder you had drawn out. They used their bodies to directly absorb and refine the heavenly thunder. In the following days, you set up one inverted thunder conduction formation after another. You adjusted the strength of the heavenly thunder drawn out by these formations according to the refining abilities of each individual. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed, and many capable cultivators of Spine Mountain joined the effort to refine the heavenly thunder. They all knew that the formation was crucial for everyone's survival. If it collapsed, no one would survive. The heavenly thunder beneath Spine Mountain was being consumed in an orderly manner. But your expression wasn't good. Seeing the speed at which these people were consuming the heavenly thunder, you already knew the outcome. The cultivators of Spine Mountain were not martial artists. Their speed in consuming the heavenly thunder was very slow. And there was too much heavenly thunder underground, accumulated over nearly 1,000,000 years. You had no better solution for this. So, you didn't join the team consuming the heavenly thunder but started thinking about other plans. After setting everything up, you found an excuse to leave Spine Mountain. In the 18th year, you began attacking multiple spirit mines of the Immortal Arrival sect, robbing spirit stones. In the 22nd year, you returned to Spine Mountain with a large amount of spirit stones and handed them to your father, Jiang Fushan. You instructed him to cultivate diligently but not to break through to the immortal realm. Indeed, without your intervention, your father Jiang Fushan had already stepped into the path of cultivation a few years ago and arrived at Spine Mountain. Your father Jiang Fushan, touched by your gesture, felt that you had grown up and were now able to honor him. He deeply remembered your words. Even though he didn't understand your intention, he felt that as your father, he should fulfill your wish. Besides giving your father a large amount of spirit stones, you also handed a significant amount to Old Lee. You asked him to distribute them among the people of Spine Mountain. Your plan was simple. You were certain that the formation left by Senior Luaya would eventually collapse, so you aimed to enhance everyone's strength in Spine Mountain. You continued to let them refine the heavenly thunder to strengthen their bodies while you plundered resources to quickly elevate their cultivation levels. Once you felt that everyone couldn't hold on any longer, you would lead them to break through the desert of death. Of course, you didn't inform the others in Spine Mountain about this. It wasn't that you didn't trust them, but you felt that revealing the inevitable collapse of the formation might demoralize the cultivators. This would be detrimental to their improvement. After all, according to your plan, the stronger they were, the more demonic pythons they could kill when breaking through the desert of death. With your totally divine body, you were curious about how delicious roasted demonic python would be. If possible, you even wanted to know the taste of dragon meat. In the 23rd year, you left Spine Mountain once again, heading directly to the Forest of 10,000 Swords. You wanted to use the totally divine body to see if you could devour killing intent. After some experimentation, you concluded that it was possible to devour it, but the effect was not good. In fact, it had a counterproductive effect. After devouring the killing intent, The sense of brutality was even more severe than being eroded by it. You thought that if you could deepen your understanding of killing intent and find a place with even more intense killing intent to comprehend and improve, using the totally divine body to devour it might be effective. But for now, this devouring power was of no use to you. You stood in front of the forest of 10,000 swords, looking up at the sky, lost in thought. It was still early in this simulation, and you were considering whether to enhance your killing intent. Soon, you reached a conclusion. You felt that your current cultivation was not strong enough, and enhancing killing intent could wait until after the tribulation crossing stage. For now, you should continue to improve your cultivation. After all, you still had a craving for dragon meat. If your cultivation improved significantly, you could team up with your father, Jiang Fushan, to slay a dragon when the people of Spine Mountain force their way into the desert of death. With that thought, you no longer hesitated. In the 24th year, you began to fully focus on improving your martial Dao. In fact, when you devoured the heavenly thunder beneath Spine Mountain earlier, your martial Dao had already reached the 4th level of the transcendent realm. However, this time, you did not go into seclusion for cultivation. Instead, you started your career as a bandit, with the totally divine body. Using eating to improve was certainly faster than bitter cultivation in seclusion. As for your targets, naturally, it was the unfortunate Immortal Arrival Sect. The Immortal Arrival Sect had been established for nearly 1,000,000 years, and the resources of the entire southern regions were in their hands. Various heavenly materials and earthly treasures, as well as demonic beast flesh and blood, were quite abundant. And all this became your target. In the 25th year, after extensive investigation, you found a small branch of the Immortal Arrival Sect. There was an elder at the 3rd level of Tribulation Crossing stationed there, and without hesitation, you launched a surprise attack. With one move of the Silent Destruction Fist, you blasted the elder to death. You ransacked the small branch, obtaining a large amount of resources. Afterwards, you hid and devoured all the resources that could enhance your martial Dao through the totally divine body. In the 26th year, your martial Dao cultivation successfully broke through to the 5th level of the transcendent realm. Improving one small realm in a year was something you had never dared to imagine before. So, you decided to go big and strong, and struck again. In the 27th year, you robbed another small branch of the Immortal Arrival Sect. In the 28th year, your martial Dao cultivation broke through to the 6th level of the transcendent realm. In the 29th year, you prepared to rob the Immortal Arrival Sect again. But after some investigation, you found that the small branches of the Immortal Arrival Sect had all increased their manpower. Each branch now had several elders at the Tribulation Crossing stage guarding them. This significantly reduced your chances of success. After all, although your current combat power could rival a 7th-layer Tribulation Crossing expert, your speed was not faster than that of a Tribulation Crossing expert. If someone managed to escape with the treasure while you were attacking, all your efforts would be in vain. Of course, you could also set up a formation to prevent them from escaping. But you thought that if you used a formation this time, they might come up with countermeasures next time. After all, you knew the true foundation of the Immortal Arrival Sect. After some thought, you decided to go for a big score. So, you set your sights on the capital of the Great Abyssal Kingdom. You knew that was the largest branch of the Immortal Arrival Sect. It was personally guarded by Shenhua Ayo, the puppet sect master. You thought there must be a lot of treasures there. With a smirk, you decided to go for it. After all, Shenhua Ayo was only at the 5th level of Tribulation Crossing, and couldn't even beat old Li. You believed you could handle him without any problems. However, you did not act recklessly. You sneaked into the capital of the Great Abyssal Kingdom. After finding the branch of the Immortal Arrival Sect, you patiently set up formations around it. In the 30th year, you looked at the last formation talisman in your hand, a smile forming on your lips. As long as you inserted this formation talisman into the formation, a super trap formation would be completed. At this moment, you could almost see the scene of obtaining a large number of treasures. In fact, you were only an 8th grade formation master, and if you set up an ordinary 8th grade trap formation, it could only trap those at the Great Ascension stage. But since you were setting up the formation, You naturally considered this issue. So, you set up not a single 8th grade formation, but a composite trap formation composed of multiple 8th grade formations. Such a formation took more time and effort, which is why it took you a year to complete. In fact, it was because the Immortal Arrival sect was too arrogant. They focused their attention on other branches, and the defense of this largest branch was not as tight. Otherwise, even if they had patrolled more frequently, you wouldn't have been able to complete such a complex formation. Now, this composite trap formation composed of multiple 8th grade formations, although still unable to trap tribulation crossing experts for long, you believed it could hold them for a day or two. With your current strength, as long as they couldn't escape, 2 days would be enough for you to ransack this branch. Without hesitation, you inserted the formation talisman into the formation, and the formation instantly took shape. Immediately, outside the capital of the Great Abyssal Kingdom, light radiated in all directions, and the light shield enveloped it. Seeing this, countless figures flew out from the capital of the Great Abyssal Kingdom. Some were wearing official robes, some were holding spatulas, and some were dressed in rags, looking like beggars. You were not surprised by this, knowing that the people of the Immortal Arrival sect had always hidden among mortals, and this so-called branch of the Immortal Arrival sect actually included not only people from the Immortal Arrival sect but also many clueless mortals. Usually, the people of the Immortal Arrival sect would not easily reveal their identities, but now, they couldn't care less. After all, they were all cultivators, and the moment the formation took shape, they knew an enemy had arrived. As for the mortals who saw them reveal their true selves, they could just kill them later. And you, thinking it was just a simulation, didn't care about the lives of these mortals. So, without hesitation, you stepped into the formation you had set up. As soon as you entered the formation, you shouted, "Little brats of the Immortal Arrival sect, you are surrounded by me." As soon as you spoke, you felt great. You had been waiting for this moment to show off for a long time, and finally, you got your chance. At this moment, the immortal slaves of the Immortal Arrival sect stared at you with vigilant expressions. A great battle was about to break out, and the immortal slaves couldn't hold back and attacked first. However, the strongest among them was only at the first level of tribulation crossing, and you easily slaughtered them like a tiger among sheep. You began a massacre, and soon, your white clothes were stained with blood. You raised your blade and had just killed an immortal slave when you suddenly felt a warning in your heart. You quickly turned around, only to see several immortal slaves at the 9th level of tribulation crossing attacking you. You were shocked and somewhat puzzled. You remembered that in the previous simulations, there was no mention of any 9th level tribulation crossing experts at this branch of the Immortal Arrival sect. Could it be that these 9th level tribulation crossing immortal slaves had been hiding all along, only to reveal themselves at this critical moment? Suddenly, it dawned on you that this might indeed be the case. After all, Shan, the founder of the Immortal Arrival sect, although hiding at the headquarters, still had tasks to complete for the great powers of the immortal realm. He certainly couldn't let this important branch fall, so it made sense to leave some 9th level tribulation crossing experts to guard it. You sighed softly. I was careless. You felt a bit regretful. All the plans and preparations you made were now in vain, and you wouldn't get to eat the dragon meat. Understanding your predicament, you didn't think further. You quickly used your one-time talent, face to face, and silently chanted Beiru Oaksu's name in your heart. You felt a tremor all over, and your figure instantly disappeared from the spot. This made everyone at the Immortal Arrival sect frown, and Shanwei immediately headed to the headquarters to report the situation to Shan. You were unaware of the reactions at the Immortal Arrival sect, because you had already appeared in front of Beiru Oaksu. However, it seemed your timing was off. At this moment, you saw Beiru Oaksu in front of you swinging her sword in a fierce slash. Behind you, a fire phoenix was spewing flames. Anyone with a brain could tell that Beiru Oaksu was in a fierce battle with the fire phoenix. You had appeared right in the middle of their battle, and both attacks were perfectly aimed at you. WTF, you cursed instinctively. Was this going to be the end for you? With a loud bang, you were hit by both attacks. Fortunately, at the critical moment, you used Divine Tao to convert all your spiritual energy into primordial energy, enhancing your physical defense. The two attacks didn't kill you, but taking both attacks head-on still left you covered in blood. At this moment, Bairuoxu also realized what had happened. She didn't ask how you appeared but grabbed you and turned to leave. The Fire Phoenix didn't pursue but instead taunted Bairuoxu in human speech. This infuriated Bairuoxu, who cursed and vowed to pluck all the feathers off the turkey next time. Although injured, you didn't lose consciousness. Suddenly, you understood why, in a previous simulation, when you obtained the Calamity Physique talent, Bairuoxu had thrown you into the Valley of Flames. Damn it, it was to vent her anger. You guessed that Bairuoxu had a grudge against the Fire Phoenix, and so the demonic phoenix in the Valley of Flames, being of the same kind, suffered unjustly. After half a day, Bairuoxu brought you to a residence. Only then did she ask how you had escaped from the southern regions. You knew that Bairuoxu had bribed the mystic turtle with spirit stones to get into the southern regions, so you bluffed, saying you had used a massive amount of resources to bribe the mystic turtle to leave. Sure enough, after hearing this, Bairuoxu didn't ask further. She just gave you a thumbs up. After all, she thought she could bribe her way in and out of the southern regions because she wasn't originally from there. Even if the bribe failed, her life wouldn't be in much danger. But you were from the southern regions, and daring to do this, she admired your courage. Because she believed that if you failed, the mystic turtle would surely kill you. Later, you asked Bairuoxu about the current environment. You learned that this was the eastern regions, and the largest sect here was the Celestial Verdant sect. Besides that, there were thousands of other sects, big and small. Bairuoxu herself was a direct disciple of the Celestial Verdant sect. You were shocked to hear this. You couldn't believe that a seventh-layer tribulation crossing expert was just a disciple. How powerful must the Celestial Verdant sect be? But Bairuoxu only smiled and didn't explain further. After settling you down, she left. You had only met twice, and it was a chance encounter. Her settling you down and providing some information was already quite kind. Of course, this was also because you were relatively strong at the moment. She was cautious and didn't fully trust you. If you had been a chosen with great talent but weak strength, things might have turned out differently. In the end, you were left alone. You thought that since you had already left the southern regions, you could just lay low and develop without relying on anyone. A month later, your injuries were fully healed. You recovered so quickly because, although the injuries seemed severe, they were all physical. You practiced martial Tao, so your body was inherently strong, and with the recovery power of the Imo divine body, you healed quite rapidly. Once fully recovered, you began to consider your next steps. Ultimately, you decided that besides cultivating, you also needed to explore the outside world more. Having finally left the southern regions, you felt it was time to understand the overall situation of the Nine Mystic Realm. If possible, you wanted to see the other regions. Especially, you wanted to know which regions the gaps in the ceiling formation of the southern regions connected to. In the 31st year, you traveled through the eastern regions, killing many demonic beasts. In the 35th year, your martial Tao cultivation broke through to the 7th layer of the transcendent realm. In 5 years, you hunted numerous demonic beasts, using your gluttonous beast physique to devour them, which allowed you to advance by 1 layer in your martial Tao cultivation. Actually, this speed wasn't faster than when you were in the southern regions. After all, in the southern regions, you had obtained a lot of resources by robbing the immortal arrival sect. However, this speed wasn't slow either, and you were quite satisfied. In the 42nd year, your martial Tao cultivation broke through to the 8th layer of the transcendent realm. By this time, you had traveled through half of the eastern regions. You witnessed the prosperity of the eastern regions, where almost everyone knew about cultivation. Every few years, the major sects would open their doors to recruit disciples. It could be said that as long as one had a bit of talent, almost everyone had the opportunity to enter the path of cultivation. Seeing this, you felt sorry for the people of the southern regions. In the southern regions, not to mention everyone cultivating, Even inquiring about cultivators would get you killed by the immortal slaves of the immortal arrival sect. The comparison was truly stark. In the 50th year, your martial Dao cultivation broke through to the 9th level of the Transcendent Realm. In the same year, you had a chance encounter with Bairuoxiu. You quickly seized the opportunity to ask her how to leave the eastern regions and travel to other major regions. Upon hearing your question, Bairuoxiu mentioned a place to head southward to the southern regions. But that wasn't what you wanted. You asked her about the routes from the eastern regions to the other two major regions. Hearing this, Bairuoxiu seemed to want to say something but couldn't find the words. She felt she should know the answer to your question, but why didn't she have any memory of it? Bairuoxiu desperately tried to recall, suddenly clutching her head and rolling on the ground in pain. Seeing this, you were utterly confused, with 1,000 questions running through your mind. What's going on? You just asked how to leave the eastern regions, so why is she rolling on the ground? After a long while, Bairuoxiu got up from the ground, looking at you curiously and asking how you left the southern regions. Hearing this, you felt a chill down your spine. How could it be? Bairuoxiu actually asked you how to leave the southern regions. You stared at Bairuoxiu for a long time, confirming she wasn't faking it. You concluded that she had lost her memory. You suddenly recalled her clutching her head and rolling on the ground earlier. You speculated that maybe she couldn't say how to leave the eastern regions. Your guess was partially correct but not entirely. You didn't know that the real reason was that Bairuoxiu had no memory of this at all. No, to be precise, her memories in this regard were sealed. If she tried to recall forcibly, she would experience the same kind of painful rolling on the ground. Eventually, she would lose even more memories. Unfortunately, you were unaware of all this. At this moment, you looked up at the sky, still speculating. You suspected you were being watched, that a powerful being was observing this place. But soon, you dismissed this possibility. You thought that if that were the case, you probably wouldn't be able to leave the southern regions at all. Finally, you had a bolder idea. You thought that perhaps not just the southern regions, but the other major regions were also playgrounds for powerful beings from the immortal realm? It's just that most people in these regions were unaware. At least, you knew Bairuoxiu definitely didn't know, otherwise, she wouldn't have failed to reveal anything in so many simulations. In the end, you took a deep breath and decided to use your old method to deceive Bairuoxiu. Then, you casually suggested that you wanted to join her sect. This was a plan you had just come up with. Since Bairuoxiu didn't know, then as the strongest sect in the eastern regions, the Celestial Verdant sect should have someone who knew something. You planned to join this sect and see if you could get some real information from the higher-ups. With your strength and talent, you indeed had the qualifications to join the Celestial Verdant sect. After a moment of thought, Bairuoxiu agreed to introduce you to the sect. In the 51st year, with Bairuoxiu's introduction, you successfully joined the Celestial Verdant sect. You became a guest elder of the Celestial Verdant sect. Although the title of guest elder included the word elder, it was far inferior to Bairuoxiu's status as a direct disciple. After all, a guest elder represented an outsider and had no real authority. In fact, this was also because your strength was too strong to be a regular disciple. And as a newcomer, you couldn't gain the trust of the Celestial Verdant sect to become a direct disciple. So, the position of guest elder was the most suitable for you, neither too high or too low. You came here to gather information, and this position didn't have enough authority. However, you knew that you had to take things one step at a time. As a newcomer, becoming a guest elder was better than being a regular disciple. You could barely accept it. In the 55th year, your martial Dao reached the peak of the Transcendent Realm, and your immortal Dao also reached the peak of the Great Ascension stage. You felt a bit excited, as you were finally about to break through to a higher realm. In the 56th year, your martial Dao first broke through to the Half-Saint Realm, followed closely by your immortal Dao reaching the Tribulation Crossing stage. As you reached the Tribulation Crossing realm, the sky was filled with lightning and thunder, and a tribulation began to gather. This was unexpected for you, as in the southern regions, others who broke through to the Tribulation Crossing stage never had a tribulation descend. In previous simulations, you had only seen your father attract a lightning tribulation when he broke through to the immortal realm. Although your cultivation was special, apart from causing a stir during the core formation stage, other breakthroughs hadn't caused any significant commotion. Unexpectedly, when you reached the tribulation crossing stage, changes occurred again. This made your heart race with anxiety. You worried that the immortals of the immortal realm might be up to something again. Just as you were lost in thought, the sect master of the celestial verdant sect, Bai Moyu, shouted, "Leave the sect's boundaries to undergo your tribulation." Hearing this, you realized you were still within the sect's range. If the tribulation really descended, wouldn't half the sect be destroyed? So, without hesitation, you flew out of the sect's boundaries. 3 days later, you successfully passed the lightning tribulation and returned to the celestial verdant sect. Upon your return, you were summoned by the sect master, Bai Moyu. Bai Moyu stared at you for a long time before finally saying, "You didn't even know that entering the tribulation crossing stage requires undergoing a tribulation." Hearing this, you were stunned. You had never considered this question before, thinking it was a personal issue. Unexpectedly, it was a common occurrence for cultivators in this place to attract a lightning tribulation when reaching the tribulation crossing stage. Before you could think further, Bai Moyu continued, asking who you really were and where you came from. You hadn't expected Bai Oaksu to be so loyal, as she had never mentioned that you weren't from the eastern regions. However, since Bai Moyu asked, you didn't hide it and directly stated that you came from the southern regions. You felt this wasn't something that couldn't be said. From Bai Oaksu's memory loss, you knew there were definitely secrets here, and you guessed they were related to the immortal realm. And this sect master of the celestial verdant sect probably knew quite a bit. So, you thought you were likely allies. Previously, you hadn't had the opportunity to interact with this sect master, but now was a perfect chance. Even if you were wrong, you were willing to take the risk. After hearing your words, Bai Moyu seemed thoughtful and finally sighed. Yes, apart from the southern regions, where else could someone come from? Bai Moyu waved his hand and directly grabbed you. You wanted to resist, but it was futile as you were tightly restrained by him. However, Bai Moyu didn't harm you but instead flew off into the distance with you. You didn't know where he was taking you, but you were already deeply shocked, as Bai Moyu's strength was formidable. You had just broken through to the first level of the tribulation crossing stage in Immortal Dao and the first level of the half-saint realm in Martial Dao. Theoretically, you should be able to match a normal 9th level tribulation crossing expert. However, when facing Bai Moyu's restraint, you had no power to resist. You had used the Eye of Insight to check, and Bai Moyu was only at the 9th level of the tribulation crossing stage. This made your previously somewhat arrogant heart, due to multiple instances of surpassing levels in battle, settle down. You kept warning yourself not to be complacent, not to underestimate anyone in the world. After half a day, Bai Moyu brought you to the depths of the celestial verdant sect. As Bai Moyu continued flying, you finally stopped in front of a towering peak. This place was already deep within the celestial verdant sect, a place you had no prior access to. You had no idea why Bai Moyu brought you here now. While you were looking around, Bai Moyu performed a few incantations, revealing a passageway beneath the peak. He grabbed you and stepped inside. As soon as you entered the passage, Bai Moyu released his hold on you, allowing you to walk beside him. You were puzzled, not knowing what this place was. But you didn't ask much, choosing to follow his steps. You thought that with the power Bai Moyu had just displayed, if he wanted to harm you, he wouldn't need to go through all this trouble. Following the passage downward, without any branches, you calculated that you had walked for about 5 or 6 hours before Bai Moyu stopped again. Looking at the bronze gate in front of Bai Moyu, you understood that this must be the destination. At this moment, your curiosity was at its peak. You had to know, walking for 5 or 6 hours wasn't a leisurely stroll. You used your cultivation. You estimated that you were now at least tens of thousands of meters underground. Such a depth, with a bronze gate, was clearly unusual. Without letting you guess further, Baiamoyu directly placed his hand on the bronze gate, which opened in response. You immediately felt a suction force pulling you in, and you were involuntarily drawn through the gate. When you reappeared, you found yourself in a grand hall. Baiamoyu was standing beside you. You had a lot of questions and wanted to ask. Just as you were about to speak, you suddenly saw a crystal coffin appear ahead. Inside the coffin lay a man. After a quick glance, you instinctively looked at Baiamoyu beside you, then back at the man in the coffin. Instantly, you were shocked. The man in the coffin looked exactly like Baiamoyu. At that moment, you saw Baiamoyu push open the coffin and lie inside. Soon, you saw Baiamoyu merge with the man in the coffin. What was going on? You felt like your brain couldn't keep up. But then, something even more surprising happened. You saw Baiamoyu's cultivation change. At this moment, your eye of insight couldn't see through Baiamoyu's cultivation anymore. It only showed question marks. You thought to yourself, this is bad. Clearly, he was now at least on the same level as Shinushin. Such a powerful figure, would he, like Shinushin, want to refine your divine Tao cultivation? But even if that were the case, you had no choice, as you no longer had the talent to escape. Just as you were lost in thought, Baiamoyu spoke. Baiamoyu smiled at you and said, "Don't worry, I'm still me." Hearing this, you felt somewhat relieved. After all, if he was still the same Baiamoyu, the danger shouldn't be too great. Of course, even if there was danger, you had no way to resist. So, you braced yourself and nodded, asking him why he brought you here. Baiamoyu said that his true cultivation and certain memories couldn't be easily taken outside. This was the place where he stored his cultivation and memories. He smiled at you and said, "Don't you want to know about the 9 mystic realm?" If he didn't come here, his original memories wouldn't have accurate information. Hearing this, you suddenly understood. It seemed Baiamoyu indeed knew a lot. But for some reason, he couldn't know, or it wasn't safe for him to carry those memories, so he used a special method to store them here. When needed, he would return here to retrieve his memories. As for his change in cultivation, you guessed it was for the same reason he couldn't possess too high a cultivation. However, you couldn't understand why Baiamoyu would reveal such an important secret to you. This could be a matter of life and death for him. Seeing your prolonged silence, Baiamoyu teased, "Don't overthink it. I revealed my secret to you because you come from the southern regions. We're destined to be on the same side." Baiamoyu's words confused you even more. But fortunately, he didn't keep you in suspense. Baiamoyu led you to the center of the hall. There, you saw 3 maps. Baiamoyu pointed to the maps and asked if you noticed any changes. After observing for a while, you hesitantly said, "Is the continent shattered?" Baiamoyu nodded and said, "Yes, the continent is shattered." He told you that these 3 maps depicted the changes in the 9 mystic realm. Hearing that they were maps of the 9 mystic realm, you observed more carefully. After a few minutes, you looked at Baiamoyu and said, "Aren't we in the eastern regions now?" Baiamoyu, with a sorrowful expression, said, "Yes and number." He explained that this place could no longer be considered part of the eastern regions. It was now just a massive landmass drifting on the sea. This land originally belonged to the eastern regions, but due to the continent's fragmentation, it had drifted southward to the southern regions. Hearing this, you suddenly understood and cursed yourself for not realizing it sooner. The 3 maps you just observed, the first showed an intact continent, with the southern regions at the southernmost part, connected to other regions. The second map showed the 9 mystic realms regions breaking into various landmasses, drifting into the sea. The third map depicted the largest landmass of the eastern regions completely splitting, with the largest piece drifting southward to the southern regions. You recalled the situation in the southern regions, where the ceiling formation's 4 cracks corresponded to 4 directions. The other directions could be explained, but the southern regions were already at the southernmost end of the 9 mystic realm, connected to the endless sea to the south. How could it be part of another region? After seeing these maps, everything became clear. But at the same time, you had a new question. How did such a vast continent suddenly crack? Was it a natural disaster or a man-made calamity? This time, Baiamoyu didn't leave you guessing. He told you that millions of years ago, the Nine Mystic Realm was also one of the great realms of the heavens. Back then, the Nine Mystic Realm was filled with immortals, and tribulation crossing was as common as dogs. But later, the Nine Mystic Realm was ambushed by the Immortal Clan. Caught off guard, the Nine Mystic Realm suffered heavy losses. However, the strongest figures of the Nine Mystic Realm quickly organized a counterattack, and that battle shook the heavens and the earth. As he spoke, Baiamoyu seemed to fall into the reverie. After a long while, he sighed. It's a pity that the battlefield was within our Nine Mystic Realm. That battle caused our continent to fracture and the Heavenly Tao to be damaged. He said that battles between realms are prolonged conflicts. Once the Heavenly Tao is damaged, future chosen will find it difficult to cultivate. But at that time, the strong figures of the Nine Mystic Realm were not overly concerned because their high-end combat power was not inferior to that of the Immortal Realm. Strong individuals are often arrogant, thinking that if their realm's Heavenly Tao is damaged, they could simply annihilate the Immortal Clan and then wait for the Nine Mystic Realm's Heavenly Tao to recover. At this point, Baiamoyu suddenly shouted in anger, but the despicable Immortal Clan took advantage of the Nine Mystic Realm's damaged Heavenly Tao. They moved the Immortal Realm here and used its Heavenly Tao to suppress our damaged one. Hearing this, you were astonished, not expecting such secrets about the Nine Mystic Realm. Baiamoyu paused at this point. He stared at you for a long time before slowly speaking again. He said that although the Nine Mystic Realm fell into an absolute disadvantage, after that, the war has not ended and continues to this day. He said that several top experts of the Nine Mystic Realm are still holding back the Immortal Realm's masters. However, because the Nine Mystic Realm's Heavenly Tao is damaged, there are fewer and fewer rising talents, making the war increasingly difficult. His mission is to hide his cultivation and identity, find potential talents, train them, and send excellent talents to the battlefield. Then he asked if you had heard of Mo Jingshan and Liu Yuya. You didn't know why Baiamoyu suddenly mentioned those two seniors, but you nodded, indicating you had heard of them. Baiamoyu said that both of them were trained by him. At this point, Baiamoyu raised his eyebrows slightly, a hint of pride in his expression. But you were puzzled. According to what you know, Mo Jingshan and Liu Yuya were from the southern regions. How could they have been trained by Baiamoyu? You knew that during the time of Mo Jingshan and Liu Yuya, the sealing formation in the southern regions was intact, and there was no connection to the Endless Sea. Baiamoyu seemed to see through your thoughts. He smiled and said, the protective formation in the southern regions was left by the ancestors of my celestial verdant sect. Although I can't break it, I can still send things inside. He said that the inheritances of Mo Jingshan and Liu Yuya were sent into the southern regions by him. Otherwise, no matter how talented they were, without powerful cultivation methods, how could they have made such a great name for themselves and even broken the protective formation of the southern regions together? What? The sealing formation in the southern regions was set up by your sect? You exclaimed instinctively. The sealing formation in the southern regions was left by the ancestors of the Celestial Verdant sect? You felt a sense of disarray, wondering if your previous theories needed to be completely overturned. Hearing your exclamation, Baiamoyu sighed and said that the original sealing formation in the southern regions was actually a protective formation. It was indeed set up by a powerful ancestor of the Celestial Verdant sect. Baiamoyu said that the formation was meant to protect the southern regions, allowing its people to cultivate to higher realms and give back to the Nine Mystic Realm. But unfortunately, that ancestor was ambushed and killed by the Immortal Realm before he could pass on the control techniques for the formation. As a result, what was originally a protective formation turned into a sealing formation and fell into the hands of the Immortal Realm. However, because the formation was very strong, only a few powerful beings could enter the southern regions, while ordinary immortals found it difficult. So, the immortals usually attacked the people of the southern regions with heavenly thunder from outside the formation. Hearing this, you recalled the information you had obtained from previous simulations. After thinking for a long time, you felt that what Baiamoyu said seemed to match the previous situations. In previous simulations, Aside from 2 instances of giant hands covering the sky and 1 instance of a giant foot attacking the southern regions, it seemed that no other immortals had attacked the people of the southern regions. But you still felt something was off. According to Bai Moyu, your previous theory about a grand scheme by powerful beings might need to be overturned. If that's the case, why didn't the powerful beings of the immortal realm directly destroy the southern regions? Unable to figure it out, you decided to ask directly. So, you voiced your doubt and asked Bai Moyu why the powerful beings of the immortal realm didn't directly attack the southern regions. You thought that a strong person like Bai Moyu, who had told you so much, wouldn't bother to deceive you. After all, who would go to such lengths to deceive an ant? Bai Moyu laughed heartily upon hearing your question. He said, "Did you forget that I just told you that the 9 mystic realms' powerful beings are not fewer than those of the immortal realm? Even if the powerful beings of the immortal realm wanted to attack, they would have to consider that while they were attacking the southern regions, the powerful beings of the 9 mystic realm would also attack other areas of the immortal realm. It's all about mutual balance." Bai Moyu's words resolved some of your doubts. But you still felt something was missing. You remembered the information you got from Shen Yushan, which said that after 2 powerful beings talked, one created the immortal arrival sect, and the other captured 4 fierce beasts to block the gaps in the ceiling formation. This didn't seem like protecting the southern regions. Perhaps sensing your doubt, Bai Moyu continued. He said that after Mo Jingshan and Liu Yu broke the formation in the southern regions, the powerful beings of the immortal realm originally intended to destroy the southern regions directly. But at the critical moment, the powerful beings of the 9 mystic realm arrived. After negotiations, the powerful beings of the immortal realm created the immortal arrival sect, forbidding the people of the southern regions from cultivating. They feared that more chosen would emerge, disrupting their plans to invade the 9 mystic realm. And the powerful beings of the 9 mystic realm captured 4 fierce beasts to block the formation's gaps and established an agreement that the immortal arrival sect and the fierce beasts would not interfere with each other. At this point, Bai Moyu fell silent for a moment. He said he didn't know the exact purpose of the 9 mystic realm's powerful beings, but he speculated on one possibility: poison cultivation. He said that the current situation in the 9 mystic realm is dire, and he suspected that the powerful being wanted to use the high-pressure environment to cultivate a king of poison in the southern regions. In reality, Jiang Yifeng touched his chin as he pondered. Is what Bai Moyu said in the simulation true? Something felt off. According to Bai Moyu, the 9 mystic realm had been in a constant state of war. He could understand the concept of poison cultivation in such a scenario. But Jiang Yifeng still couldn't wrap his head around it. He remembered from previous simulations that whenever his father or the Lady in Red broke through to the immortal realm, it brought about a cataclysmic disaster for the southern regions. It didn't matter if the one taking action was a powerful figure from the 9 mystic realm or the immortal realm. It all seemed very unreasonable. After all, could it be that anyone who broke through to the immortal realm was destined to become a poison king? According to Bai Moyu, the war in the 9 mystic realm had been ongoing for millions of years. Could a single immortal realm expert really change the entire landscape of the 9 mystic realm? Clearly, that was impossible. Jiang Yifeng furrowed his brows, contemplating, could Bai Moyu be deliberately deceiving me? But that didn't seem right either. The simulation had shown that Bai Moyu's strength was transcendent. Even the eye of insight couldn't see through him. What benefit would such a powerful figure gain from deceiving him? Or perhaps Bai Moyu's conjecture was simply incorrect? Maybe Bai Moyu himself didn't know the real reason. I just can't figure it out, Jiang Yifeng muttered to himself, shaking his head. However, he decided that Bai Moyu's words couldn't be fully trusted. Many things might still need to be verified personally within the simulation. Nevertheless, Jiang Yifeng believed that the credibility of those 3 maps was still quite high. After all, they corresponded with the locations of the cracks in the ceiling formation of the southern regions. In the end, he stopped thinking about it and looked at the simulator. You heard Bai Moyu's words and felt a bit suspicious, sensing that there might be some issues with what he said. You were very puzzled, but you couldn't directly ask about it. You couldn't just say, "Why can't anyone in the southern regions break through to the immortal realm? Does breaking through to the immortal realm make you a poison king?" Such words. After all, these events hadn't happened yet, you only knew about them from previous simulations. You felt that doing so might expose your knowledge of the future. Clearly, that wouldn't be good for you. So, you pretended to understand and didn't refute his words. However, at this moment, you already felt a bit of distrust towards Moyu. Afterwards, Moyu explained why breaking through to the tribulation crossing stage here would bring about a tribulation, but not in the southern regions. He said it was because this place had been separated from the continent during the early stages of the 9 Mystic Realms Great War. So it still retained the original heavenly rules of the 9 Mystic Realm. The southern regions, however, had remained connected to the main continent, and because of the ongoing war outside, the heavenly rules had long since changed, hence there were no tribulations for the tribulation crossing stage there. After hearing this, you were unsure of its truth, as the seed of distrust towards Moyu had already been planted in your heart. However, you still outwardly expressed your gratitude for Moyu's explanations. Half a day later, Moyu looked at you and said it was time for you to return to the southern regions. This startled you. Before you could speak, Moyu said that he had to store his memories underground here, and since you knew so much, you couldn't stay. You were just about to say that you could give up those memories. But Moyu didn't give you a chance to argue. With a wave of his hand, he restrained you. Then, you saw him separate himself, leaving most of his cultivation and the memories in the underground bronze gate. After finishing everything, he took you and sped southward. At this moment, you couldn't move, but you were cursing inwardly. You had finally left the southern regions, only to be sent back again. You really didn't want those memories. You just wanted to live by hiding and growing stronger. Why was it so difficult? A day later, Moyu brought you to a sea area, and not far ahead, you could see a light shield with a crack in it. You knew this was the place connecting the southern regions to the endless sea, and that light shield was the sealing formation. Upon arriving, Moyu tapped the sealing formation several times. After finishing, he kindly handed you a storage ring, telling you to use the resources inside to bribe the mystic turtle. Then, he released your restraints and threw you into the crack in the sealing formation. In an instant, you entered the southern regions. Return to the southern regions? No, you were 1,000 times unwilling. After all, you knew it was really hard to live by hiding in the southern regions for long. So, as soon as you entered the southern regions, you headed back towards the crack in the formation, intending to return to the eastern regions through it. But just as you approached the crack, Moyu's voice came from outside. He shouted, telling you that he could only hold off the formation spirit for a moment, urging you to leave quickly. Hearing this, you temporarily gave up your recent idea. However, you were now even more puzzled. Was Moyu deceiving you? Or was he telling the truth? Although you remembered the mystic turtle saying before that the formation spirit didn't allow people from the southern regions to leave through here. But since you had just come in through here, you thought the mystic turtle might have been lying to you. After all, if this sealing formation was set up by the predecessors of the Celestial Verdant sect to protect the people of the southern regions, it shouldn't prevent them from entering and leaving. But now that Moyu said the same thing, you had no choice but to believe it. Still, you felt something was off. Moyu's words gave you a strong sense of dissonance. Could it be that Moyu was very foolish, mixing up his previous statements with his current actions? Otherwise, how could it be like this? After all, his words and actions were contradictory. Moreover, his current act of throwing you back into the southern regions. This was clearly throwing you into the fire. Wasn't he afraid that you would resent him and doubt everything he had told you before? Well, it seemed he didn't need to be afraid, as he was much stronger than you. But once you started doubting, what was the point of everything he had told you before? Could it be that he had also stored his memories about this in the underground chamber? But you still felt it was wrong. He remembered to send you back to the southern regions, so those memories shouldn't be sealed temporarily. As you were puzzling over this, Baiamoyu had already returned to the Celestial Verdant sect, back to the underground bronze gate. Just as he arrived, a female voice questioned him. Why did you lie to him? If you were there, you would have seen that the one questioning him was Baiamoyu. Baiamoyu looked at Baiamoyu, who was immobilized, and smiled. My dear daughter, when did I ever lie to him? Baiamoyu saw Baiamoyu's defiant expression, paused for a moment, and continued. Has the Nine Mystic Realm been invaded by the Immortal Clan? That formation was set up by our Celestial Verdant sect, and I personally arranged it. Baiamoyu, clearly still unconvinced, was no longer the Baiamoyu of the seventh layer of tribulation. She had many hidden memories. That's right, Baiamoyu's memories had actually been sealed all along, and it was Baiamoyu who personally sealed them. And Baiamoyu was here now because you had previously asked her how she left the eastern regions, causing her to act abnormally. Baiamoyu wanted to restore her memories and then reseal them. Seeing Baiamoyu's expression, Baiamoyu smiled and continued. Didn't Mo Jingshan and Liu Yu cultivate our Celestial Verdant sect's techniques to embark on the path of cultivation? Upon hearing this, Baiamoyu angrily retorted, but those techniques weren't taught by you, they obtained the manuals left by our senior brother. Hearing Baiamoyu mention his beloved disciple, Baiamoyu's expression showed a trace of sadness. He murmured, if only your senior brother had listened to me back then, he wouldn't have met such a fate. After saying this, Baiamoyu told Baiamoyu once again not to go southward to find her senior brother. But Baiamoyu ignored him and instead questioned why Baiamoyu had deceived you. In the end, Baiamoyu sighed and said to Baiamoyu, should I tell him that the great powers of the Nine Mystic Realm have already betrayed us and are conspiring with the great powers of the Immortal Realm to seize the fragments of the Heavenly Tao? Looking at Baiamoyu, Baiamoyu said he sensed several fragments of the Heavenly Tao in you, suggesting that you might be the chosen one. Only by giving you hope could you continue to strive, perhaps leaving a sliver of hope for the Nine Mystic Realm. Otherwise, revealing such despairing truths would only crush your spirit and destroy any remaining hope. As soon as Baiamoyu finished speaking, Baiamoyu's face lit up with joy. She looked at Baiamoyu and said, Father, are you finally going to take action? But Baiamoyu shook his head, saying, let's see how things go. This caused Baiamoyu's newly formed smile to fade once again. She shouted, Father, you are also a great power of the Nine Mystic Realm. Only you have the chance to change the situation now. The people in other parts of the Nine Mystic Realm are waiting for you. Tears streamed down Baiamoyu's face as she choked out, Father, you've been hiding with us survivors, isolating your cultivation to avoid exposure, but how long can we live by hiding like this? Hearing this, Baiamoyu gave a bitter smile and offered no further explanation. Instead, with a wave of his hand, he stripped Baiamoyu of her memories and cultivation. This time, he even completely sealed the coordinates of the southern regions in her mind to prevent Baiamoyu from heading southward again. After finishing everything, he looked at the unconscious Baiamoyu and murmured, what else can I do? A single tree cannot support a forest. At this moment, Baiamoyu thought of you and suddenly smiled. How much of my poor lie did you see through? But it doesn't matter. Even if you don't believe any of it, so what? Even if you see me as an enemy, you should still strive to cultivate. Ha ha ha. After a long while, his laughter gradually stopped, and Baiamoyu finally sighed. I just hope that you, chosen by multiple fragments of the Heavenly Tao, can make it through. If you can't even avoid the deadly schemes of the great powers, how can you change the overall situation of the Nine Mystic Realm? In reality, Jiang Yifeng's eyes widened like saucers. He couldn't believe the twist had come so quickly. Baiamoyu wasn't a bad person. He had deceived him to prevent him from feeling despair over the Nine Mystic Realm's situation. As for Baiamoyu throwing his simulated self back to the southern regions, putting him in danger, Jiang Yifeng thought of a possibility based on the simulator's display. Poison cultivation. Damn it, Bai Moyu was treating him like a poison being cultivated. So, Bai Moyu hadn't lied. But, damn it, it wasn't someone else cultivating the poison, it was Bai Moyu himself. He wasn't even worried about being seen as an enemy because being seen as an enemy would still require him to cultivate desperately. Jiang Yifeng could already imagine what would happen next. If he really survived the deadly schemes of the great powers, by then, even knowing the truth, he would be a lone tree unable to support the forest and would definitely seek Bai Moyu's help, leaving only gratitude for him. And if he didn't make it through, Bai Moyu wouldn't lose anything, he could just continue hiding. So, Bai Moyu was never afraid of being suspected. Everything he did was an open strategy. All he had to do was throw Jiang Yifeng back to the southern regions to cultivate the poison. This also reasonably explained Bai Moyu's seemingly irrational actions before. Besides these thoughts, Jiang Yifeng had another idea. Why did this simulation show events outside of his perspective this time? In previous simulations, it was always from his first-person perspective, showing the plot only when he was present. But this time, even though his simulated self had returned to the southern regions, the simulator kept showing events related to Bai Moyu. Jiang Yifeng thought this might be the simulator deliberately wanting him to know this information. Could the simulator really be the heavenly Tao of the Nine Mystic Realm? It knew Bai Moyu was a great power who hadn't betrayed the Nine Mystic Realm and wanted him to know this. Then, it wanted him to recruit Bai Moyu to join the fight and save the Nine Mystic Realm. Is that it? But Jiang Yifeng felt something was off. If the simulator was really the heavenly Tao of the Nine Mystic Realm, wouldn't that be too lowly? And if the great powers' battles could shatter the heavenly Tao, could the simulator, if it were the heavenly Tao, avoid the great powers' detection? Moreover, from the simulation, Bai Moyu mentioned multiple fragments of the heavenly Tao, not the simulator. In the end, Jiang Yifeng thought the possibility of the simulator being the heavenly Tao was there, but it was extremely slim. Regardless, Jiang Yifeng knew Bai Moyu was definitely an important figure, not just because of his great powers cultivation, but because the simulator had specifically shown a segment about Bai Moyu. Jiang Yifeng silently remembered the name Bai Moyu. Then, he continued to look at the simulator. You have been thrown back to the southern regions by Bai Moyu for 2 days. During this time, you have been lingering near the formation's crack. You still think about leaving the southern regions through this crack and returning to the eastern regions to continue hiding and growing stronger. So much time has passed, you think Bai Moyu should have left by now. You approach the crack in the formation. At this moment, a mystic turtle appeared from the endless sea. It spoke human words, shouting at you, if you don't want to die, stay away. You were startled by the sudden appearance of the mystic turtle, but you didn't fully trust the mystic turtle's words. After all, if this sealing formation was really set up by the Celestial Verdant sect to protect the southern regions, it shouldn't have a formation spirit that attacks those leaving the southern regions. During this time, you have been unable to discern who is good and who is bad. Seeing you unmoved, the mystic turtle snorted coldly and said, if you wish to die, then go ahead. You remained silent for a long time, thinking that since this is just a simulation, at worst, you'd die. No matter the outcome, you thought you could at least determine whether the mystic turtle was good or bad. You could also find out if this formation was really set up by the Celestial Verdant sect to protect the southern regions. In reality, Jiang Yifeng frowned slightly as he read this. He was already certain that Bai Moyu intended to cultivate him like a poison. So, would the formation really not attack him? Jiang Yifeng murmured to himself. No. This formation was set up by Bai Moyu. Whether it would attack those from the southern regions before is unclear, but now it will definitely stop me. As he thought about it, Jiang Yifeng realized that trying to escape through the formation's gap in the simulation was absolutely impossible. It could even lead to his death, ending this simulation prematurely. Given this, Jiang Yifeng decided to initiate a deep simulation to prevent the actions within the simulator. He didn't want to waste this simulation. After all, based on the timeline, it should be just after the Heavenly Thunder, and in the southern regions, He still had decades to develop quietly. Just as Jiang Yifeng was about to start the deep simulation, he glanced at the simulator panel and felt a chill in his heart. Something was wrong. The simulator showed that the mystic turtle warned him about the danger of approaching the ceiling formation's gap. But this didn't make sense. How did it know he was from the southern regions? Based on previous simulations, the mystic turtle had said that people from the southern regions couldn't leave through the formation gap, or they would be attacked by the formation spirit. But in this simulation, he had entered from outside the southern regions, so why was the mystic turtle still giving such a warning? How did it know he was from the southern regions? Or was it lying to him all along? Was the formation gap actually not a barrier for people from the southern regions? Had the mystic turtle been the one blocking the way all along? But in previous simulations, the mystic turtle didn't seem hostile towards him. Jiang Yifeng's mind raced with analysis. Suddenly, a flash of insight struck him, and he murmured to himself, what if the mystic turtle and Bai Moyu are in cahoots? Following this line of thought, Jiang Yifeng continued to analyze. If this hypothesis were true, then the mystic turtle's previous actions of not attacking him and even offering help made sense. After all, Bai Moyu wasn't trying to kill people but was cultivating poison. Although this simulation showed Bai Moyu treating him as a poison subject, who knew if he had treated others the same way? Bai Moyu definitely didn't want people from the southern regions entering the eastern regions. So, if the mystic turtle and Bai Moyu were working together, their goal would be the same. Naturally, they wouldn't kill someone with potential but would prevent them from leaving the southern regions. After all, only the southern regions provided the most oppressive environment. This made everything reasonable. As for the formation spirit within the ceiling formation, at this moment, Jiang Yifeng was skeptical. Did the formation spirit really exist? Previously, he had almost regarded the mystic turtle as an ally and didn't think deeply about its words. But now, upon reflection, he noticed something amiss. As an 8th grade formation master, Jiang Yifeng knew that formations above the immortal level should indeed have formation spirits. But this ceiling formation had already been shattered once. And based on this simulation, there were people from the immortal realm attacking this ceiling formation. Was the formation spirit really still there? No, it was no longer there. Previously, Jiang Yifeng's understanding of formations was insufficient, and he completely trusted the mystic turtle, not thinking much about it. But now, upon reconsideration, he realized there was a serious flaw in the mystic turtle's story about the formation spirit. The ceiling formation had been shattered for millions of years. If there were a formation spirit, it should have slowly repaired the formation's gaps. After millions of years, these gaps shouldn't still exist. So, from this, he deduced that the mystic turtle had lied. The real barrier preventing people from the southern regions from leaving the endless sea had always been the mystic turtle. But it didn't harm people and even allowed Baiyu to come and go freely, which was clearly different from other fierce beasts. So, they must be in cahoots. Suddenly, Jiang Yifeng shouted. He felt like he was finally getting smarter. Jiang Yifeng believed he had uncovered the truth, because, just now, he thought of another crucial clue. Bai Moyu wanted to prevent him from leaving the southern regions, and there were only two ways to do it, through the formation or by external force. The possibility of a formation spirit was ruled out after Jiang Yifeng began to doubt the mystic turtle and analyzed it thoroughly. But with Bai Moyu's capabilities, he could naturally set up another formation spirit. After all, he was the one who arranged the ceiling formation. However, from the simulation, it was clear that Bai Moyu didn't want to expose his identity to other powerful beings. So, if he casually altered the ceiling formation, this possibility could also be ruled out. After all, any changes to the formation would be noticed by other powerful beings, Jiang Yifeng thought. So, in the end, Bai Moyu could only rely on external force. But where would this external force come from? It could only be the mystic turtle in the endless sea. After connecting all the clues, Jiang Yifeng was completely certain that his guess was correct. As for whether the mystic turtle had been sent by Bai Moyu from the beginning as part of a ruse or was bought off later, Jiang Yifeng didn't know, but it didn't matter. Thinking of this, Jiang Yifeng was no longer in a hurry to start the deep simulation to stop his actions. He wanted to see how long the mystic turtle in the simulation could keep up the act. Jiang Yifeng's lips curled into a slight smile as he watched the developments in the simulation. You didn't hesitate and walked directly towards the formation gap, intending to leave the southern regions through it. The mystic turtle, seeing you getting closer to the formation gap, knew it couldn't scare you anymore. So, it made its move. You felt yourself being pulled by a powerful force. Soon, you found yourself in the mystic turtle's claws. The mystic turtle snorted coldly, didn't waste words with you, and threw you northward. While you were still in the air, unable to control yourself, the mystic turtle's voice echoed, warning you that if you dared to approach the endless sea again, you would die. You were filled with confusion and forced to leave the endless sea. You wondered why this change occurred and what was going on with the mystic turtle. In reality, seeing this, Jiang Yifeng silently muttered, "Activate deep simulation for 1 day." Ding! Activating deep simulation for 1 day, consuming 24 origin values, remaining origin values. In an instant, Jiang Yifeng entered the simulation world. After entering the deep simulation, Jiang Yifeng first found a quiet place. Then he began a day's retreat. A day later, the deep simulation ended. Jiang Yifeng returned to reality, satisfied. Thinking about his recent actions, he couldn't help but give himself a thumbs up. Then he continued to watch the simulator. You looked around at your surroundings, momentarily bewildered. You clearly remembered being in the wild, so how did you end up in a cave? Suddenly, you seemed to understand something. You started searching around. A few moments later, you found a notebook filled with writing. You realized you had been deep simulated, but you couldn't understand why the deep simulation occurred at this time. So, you began reading the notebook. After finishing the notebook, your pupils contracted. You couldn't believe that outside your vision, the simulator had shown other things. This made you understand why you were deep simulated. It turned out that the real you was sending you information. Finally, you gave a thumbs up to the void, thinking, as expected of me. However, to be honest, this information doesn't really help you much. It only serves to completely extinguish your thoughts of leaving the southern regions through the endless sea. So, you head towards Spine Mountain. You know very well that 56 years have passed in the simulation, and the heavenly thunder has already descended upon the southern regions. But you still want to take a look at Spine Mountain. After all, this time, Old Lee and the others at Spine Mountain have been working together to eliminate the underground heavenly thunder. Although you know that the collapse of the formation left by Aya is inevitable, with so many people working together, there's a good chance they could delay the collapse. If they really manage to delay the collapse, then you think that perhaps the heavenly thunder from a few years ago didn't wipe out everyone at Spine Mountain. In that case, you might still have a chance to venture into the desert of death with the cultivators of Spine Mountain and leave. In the 57th year, you observe the scene at Spine Mountain from a distance, and a smile forms on your lips. The people at Spine Mountain are temporarily safe and haven't been struck down by the heavenly thunder. You know this is because their efforts to eliminate the underground heavenly thunder have been effective. As long as the formation left by Aya hasn't completely collapsed, they can still survive by relying on it. But as you approach Spine Mountain, your expression darkens. Now, whether in terms of cultivation or formations, you have surpassed your past self. You can sense the underground heavenly thunder roaring beneath Spine Mountain. It seems like it could break through the ground at any moment. You know that the formation left by Aya won't hold out much longer. Thinking of this, you don't hesitate and quickly head towards the formation. When you arrive at the formation and see the scene inside, your heart fills with sorrow. At this moment, everyone in the formation is emaciated, and may have already died, leaving only their skeletons. Because many have died, the fixed thunder conduction formations you left behind are now unmanned, so you see many people enduring several bolts of underground heavenly thunder, trying to absorb and dissipate them. You can tell that many of the cultivators at Spine Mountain are on the verge of collapse. Your appearance is immediately noticed by everyone. Your father, Jiang Fushan, is overjoyed but only gives you a slight smile, not daring to move. Because he is also here, enduring the underground heavenly thunder. If he leaves, the heavenly thunder he is enduring will have to be borne by others. This might cause a few more cultivators at Spine Mountain to lose their lives. Apart from your father, Old Lee and the others see you as a lifeline. Before you can speak, Old Lee starts to tell you about everything that has happened over the years, hoping you have a solution. But you don't need Old Lee to explain, you've already seen the problem. The people here, enduring the heavenly thunder, can't leave. Because if they stop dissipating the underground heavenly thunder, the formation will collapse instantly. And everyone is in the central area of the formation. Once it collapses, escaping will be nearly impossible. Even so, you quietly listen to Old Lee finish his explanation. After listening, you learn that initially, everyone could endure the underground heavenly thunder within their limits. But a few years ago, the heavenly thunder from outside reappeared, continuously striking the formation, making the underground heavenly thunder even more ferocious. The formation kept flashing with lightning, as if it could collapse at any moment. This caused those enduring the underground heavenly thunder to die one by one. And once someone died, a thunder conduction formation would be left unmanned, forcing someone else to endure an additional bolt of heavenly thunder. This cycle made it increasingly difficult for the people at Spine Mountain. Until now, nearly half of them have lost their lives. Old Lee knows your expertise in formations and strength are formidable, and he stares at you intently, hoping you can save everyone. Looking at the current situation, you know that saving the formation is impossible. But if it's just about saving people, there's still a chance. You start calculating in your mind. You're thinking whether to seize the moment while the formation hasn't collapsed and escape by yourself, or take a bit of the risk and try to save everyone at Spine Mountain. Finally, you make up your mind to stay, because you think that even if you escape and keep hiding, you can only live a few more decades. When the heavenly thunder descends again, you'll still die. Moreover, you previously stormed the largest branch of the Immortal Arrival sect. You're worried that experts from the Immortal Arrival sect are hunting you. Wandering outside, you might not survive until the next heavenly thunder descent. Given this, it's better to stay and try to save everyone. You have some confidence in your heart. And once you save them, after they leave the formation, you think you'll benefit too. At the very least, when you venture into the desert of death, you'll have a chance to leave the southern regions. Although leaving from there isn't safe, you still want to see what's on the other side and gather more information. Thinking of this, you use the Eye of Insight to check your father's cultivation, at the 9th level of Tribulation Crossing. Good. You swallow hard, thinking you might get a chance to eat dragon meat. Of course, besides that, staying has another benefit. You can use the underground heavenly thunder to temper your body and enhance your martial Dao. Having made your decision, you don't hesitate any longer and join the group dissipating the heavenly thunder. Yes, your plan is simple and straightforward. You will dissipate the heavenly thunder yourself. After all, you practice martial Dao and have the Immo divine body to repair your body, so you can dissipate the heavenly thunder faster than your father, Jiang Fushan. As long as you can dissipate the underground heavenly thunder to a stable level, preventing an instant collapse, you can then have Old Lee and your father, along with other strong cultivators at the Tribulation Crossing stage, take the lower level cultivators and escape the formation. With their Tribulation Crossing cultivation, as long as the formation doesn't collapse instantly and they have a few seconds of buffer time, it will be enough to escape. You immediately move aside a dozen body integration stage cultivators who are about to collapse, and take over the underground heavenly thunder they were enduring. In an instant, dozens of bolts of underground heavenly thunder strike you. You feel the power and don't sense much. So, you glance at the nearby Great Ascension stage cultivators. Feeling a surge of confidence, you also take over the heavenly thunder they were enduring. For a moment, they all look at you with gratitude. After all, they were already on the verge of collapse, and now someone is helping them bear the burden. It's like being given a new lease on life. And as you take over the underground heavenly thunder from these Great Ascension stage cultivators, you feel it for a moment, and it feels like a massage. You're overjoyed, realizing your body has become so strong. So, you shout boldly, "Those who can't hold on, direct all the heavenly thunder to me." Hearing your confident words, everyone was taken aback. but they still harbored a bit of doubt. As time passed, those who were struggling to hold on saw that you indeed seemed fine, looking relaxed, and eventually directed their lightning towards you. Soon, you were surrounded by thunder, your figure almost obscured. After all, the highest cultivation level among those who had just transferred the underground heavenly thunder to you was only at the Great Ascension stage. Even with a bit more quantity, it posed no threat to your current martial Tao cultivation. It didn't even manage to seriously injure you. Your Yimu divine body hadn't even come into play. You sighed inwardly, thinking how strong martial Tao was. This level of defense was something pure immortal Tao cultivators couldn't compare to. Just then, a massive bolt of thunder surged towards you. Instantly, white smoke rose from your head, your body convulsed, and blood spurted from your wounds. Looking at old Li, who seemed completely at ease, you could only think, damn it. You had just boasted, but you were really targeting those cultivators below the tribulation crossing stage. Who knew old Li, at the 7th layer of tribulation, would suddenly pull this stunt? This sudden attack almost cost you half your life. Of course, with your current martial Tao, you could have withstood the heavenly thunder that old Li endured. But it was too sudden. And he transferred it to you when you were already enduring countless bolts of thunder. However, despite old Li's sudden move making you look miserable, your Yimu divine body had started to activate. Soon, your body began to heal. Old Li, who initially thought he had caused trouble, breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing your condition. In truth, old Li didn't want to direct the heavenly thunder to you, but he had reached his limit. Previously, many people, when they couldn't bear it, would transfer their heavenly thunder to old Li and your father, Jiang Fushan. After all, the two of them were the strongest and naturally bore more. So, seeing you easily withstand and consume so much heavenly thunder, old Li thought of letting you help him hold on for a bit to give him some breathing room. In the following month, most of the cultivators on Spine Mountain took turns resting and adjusting their states. Only you and your father continuously consumed the underground heavenly thunder. It could be said that your current efficiency in consuming the thunder was almost equivalent to half of the cultivators on Spine Mountain. However, not long after, once all the cultivators on Spine Mountain had adjusted their states, they once again drew the thunder they needed to consume from you. Everyone was smart and united. They knew that if they didn't participate in consuming the thunder, even with you, the formation could only maintain the status quo and would be hard to repair. If the external heavenly thunder came again, they might not survive. But they didn't know that even if they participated, the formation couldn't be repaired. The underground heavenly thunder was beyond what you all could consume. This was actually a misunderstanding you deliberately let them have. Because you never said the formation was beyond saving, but stayed to participate in consuming the thunder. You wanted them to misunderstand. Otherwise, you wouldn't have dared to take on their thunder consumption earlier. If they knew the truth and ran away, you'd be stuck here alone. After everyone drew the thunder from you, you immediately felt relieved. But you didn't idle. You set up a separate inverted thunder conduction formation for yourself. Previously, you just gave others a breather, taking over their work. The actual consumption hadn't changed much. From this moment, the accelerated consumption of the underground heavenly thunder began. As you continuously consumed the underground heavenly thunder, your martial Tao cultivation also steadily improved. In the blink of an eye, decades passed. In the 79th year, your martial Tao cultivation reached the 2nd layer of semi-saint. The higher your strength, even with the aid of heavenly thunder, the slower the improvement. Over the years, the underground heavenly thunder on Spine Mountain had been significantly consumed. Now, you could basically ensure that everyone could safely evacuate before the formation collapsed. But you didn't do so because you felt there was still time and wanted to use the thunder here to further improve your martial Tao cultivation. Others, however, thought you wanted to completely resolve the crisis of the formation's collapse. It was a beautiful misunderstanding. In the 80th year, your talent, Late Bloomer, triggered, doubling your cultivation speed. In the 89th year, your martial Tao cultivation reached the 3rd layer of semi-saint. With the buff from Late Bloomer, your cultivation speed noticeably increased. In the 90th year, the effect of late bloomer strengthened again. In the 99th year, your martial Tao cultivation reached the peak of the 4th layer of semi-saint, nearing the 5th layer. In the 100th year, the effect of late bloomer increased to 3 times. In the same year, your martial Tao finally reached the 5th layer of semi-saint. But you didn't continue cultivating, because it had been over 40 years since the 53rd heavenly thunder descended, and you didn't know when the next one would come. You decided to prepare early. After all, the formation couldn't withstand the next heavenly thunder. Without hesitation, you told everyone the truth. You instructed the experts in the tribulation crossing stage to take those with lower cultivation levels and quickly leave the center of the formation. Hearing your words, everyone panicked. But soon, they accepted the reality. Finally, under your command, all the tribulation crossing experts led everyone to swiftly evacuate the center of the formation. You were no exception, retreating with everyone without delay. Just a few minutes after you all evacuated, the entire formation exploded. Spine Mountain instantly became an ocean of thunder. Seeing the scene before them, everyone turned their gaze to you. Unknowingly, you had become the backbone of everyone on Spine Mountain. This was only natural. Previously, everyone trusted Old Li because he could protect them. But now, not only were you as strong as Old Li, you also understood formations, and you had your father, Jiang Fushan, who was even stronger than Old Li, standing by your side. Naturally, you became the one to make decisions. Seeing everyone like this, you didn't refuse and quickly made a plan. You told everyone to first restore their own states. You decided that once everyone was back to their best condition, you would force your way through the desert of death. Actually, you had also considered breaking through the Valley of Flames. After all, you knew clearly that beyond the Valley of Flames was the Great Wilderness, which was much safer than the Dragon Tomb on the other side of the Desert of Death. However, you also knew that the demonic phoenix in the Valley of Flames was stronger than the demonic dragon. So, you decided to pick the easier target first. If it wasn't too difficult to deal with, you could always try the Valley of Flames later. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. Everyone had adjusted their states, and your group set off towards the Desert of Death with great vigor. Along the way, you encountered quite a few immortal slaves from the Immortal Arrival sect, but their cultivation levels were not high. The strongest were only at the 2nd or 3rd level of Tribulation Crossing, and you easily killed them. As for the immortal slaves at the 9th level of Tribulation Crossing, they did not appear. Not long after entering the Desert of Death, the demonic dragon unsurprisingly came out to stop you. You exchanged a smile with your father and moved towards the demonic dragon together. Yes, this time, you were going to fight alongside your father, Jiang Fushan. At this moment, although your immortal Tao cultivation was only at the 1st level of Tribulation Crossing, your martial Tao cultivation had reached the 5th level of Semi-Saint. But you cultivated the Divine Tao, allowing you to convert primordial energy and spiritual energy interchangeably. Coupled with your killing intent, the Law of Thunder, and the Silent Destruction Fist, your actual combat power far exceeded Old Li's. You were confident that you could defeat an ordinary 9th level Tribulation Crossing opponent. As for your father, he had reached the peak of Tribulation Crossing, and due to years of consuming heavenly thunder from beneath Spine Mountain, his physical body was stronger than ever. Most crucially, he had also mastered a trace of the Law of Thunder, just like you. So, this time, you were ambitious. You didn't just want to defeat the demonic dragon, you wanted to kill it, eat its flesh, and drink its blood to enhance yourself. As you and your father Jiang Fushan approached the demonic dragon, the others were also engaged in battle with demonic pythons. Old Li, following your instructions, went to the bottom of the desert to search for a formation rift. This was your backup plan. You thought that if something unexpected happened, as long as Old Li found the formation rift in advance, you could escape the southern regions in time. But if nothing went wrong, you still wanted to kill the demonic dragon and then try breaking through the Valley of Flames. In fact, you believed that with you and your father working together, you had a good chance of making it through the Valley of Flames. In the blink of an eye, you and your father Jiang Fushan were already in front of the demonic dragon. Looking at the demonic dragon's massive body, you licked your lips, thinking, How long could this last as food? Just as you were lost in thought, your father, with his fiery temper, couldn't hold back any longer. You heard him shout, "Fight!" and then charge at the demonic dragon. Watching your father, you pursed your lips and sighed. Old folks these days are so passionate, not steady at all. But despite your complaints, you didn't hesitate and quickly followed your father Jiang Fushan to attack the demonic dragon. After all, this was a 2-on-1 fight, your specialty, and you couldn't fall behind. The battle with the demonic dragon began, and you and your father Jiang Fushan quickly gained the upper hand. However, your father looked at you strangely, his expression somewhat grim. He watched as you continuously attacked the demonic dragon's private parts, thinking, is this how you fight? Do young people have no sense of martial ethics these days? But you felt no shame, instead feeling proud, even giving your father a thumbs up during a brief respite. You thought that although the main credit for gaining the upper hand was yours, your father's contribution was also significant. After all, he was the main attacker, drawing the fire, giving you the opportunity to move around and attack the demonic dragon's weak points. Such perfect coordination without prior practice made you feel that you and your father were truly worthy of being father and son. Just as you were feeling proud, the demonic dragon let out a long roar and began to flee. There was no way you and your father Jiang Fushan would let the demonic dragon escape, so you immediately gave chase. But along the way, numerous demonic pythons sacrificed themselves to cover the demonic dragon's retreat, adding some obstacles to your pursuit. Before long, you saw the demonic dragon retreat into its lair. Seeing this, you sneered, "Ha, do you think you can survive by running back to your lair?" So, you and your father exchanged a glance and charged into the dragon's lair. Once inside, you saw the demonic dragon devouring dragon eggs. Isn't there a saying that even a tiger won't eat its cubs? What is this demonic dragon doing now? And even if the demonic dragon devours the dragon eggs, does it think it can survive? You felt a bit disdainful. But soon, your disdain turned into shock, because you saw the demonic dragon's body undergoing continuous changes. The originally earthy yellow dragon scales now had a trace of gold. Besides that, its body was still growing. Most importantly, its cultivation level was also increasing. From the original 9th level of Tribulation Crossing, it had now reached the peak of Tribulation Crossing and was still growing. You were now utterly confused. Could devouring its own dragon eggs really bring such a huge improvement to the demonic dragon? Suddenly, you thought of a possibility. These dragon eggs were not the demonic dragon's. If the demonic dragon's bloodline was impure, devouring a more pure-blooded demonic dragon egg could indeed lead to evolution and significant improvement. You thought this was the most likely scenario. After all, you had devoured these dragon eggs in previous simulations, and their energy was not this exaggerated, not enough to support the enhancement of a 9th-level Tribulation Crossing demonic dragon. And now, the demonic dragon's improvement was visible to the naked eye, so the only possibility was bloodline evolution. You cursed inwardly, damn it. If I had known, I would have eaten the dragon eggs first. But who could have thought these dragon eggs weren't the demonic dragons? Being deceived was inevitable. At this point, there was no use in saying more. Without hesitation, you shouted, "Fight!" and charged up. You were no gentleman. You wouldn't let the demonic dragon finish its enhancement and then have a fair fight. Now, you had to kill it quickly before it finished enhancing. Your father Jiang Fushan, seeing you charge up first, naturally wouldn't stand by. The two of you once again engaged in battle with the demonic dragon. But this time, you found it hard to overpower the demonic dragon, because not only had its cultivation level increased, but its physical body had also significantly strengthened. The demonic dragon's body was already strong, and now it was even stronger, making it difficult to injure it with ordinary attacks. In fact, this was inevitable, as the demonic race was known for their powerful bodies. And as the battle dragged on, the demonic dragon's strength continued to increase, and it was on the verge of breaking through to the immortal realm. For a moment, the pressure was on your side. Seeing the situation, you and your father, Jiang Fushan, fought with increasing fervor, determined to slay the demonic dragon before it could break through. However, the demonic dragon's hide was thick and tough. Even with all your strength, You and your father couldn't kill it quickly. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed, and the battle with the demonic dragon continued. By now, the demonic dragon was covered in wounds, but its aura had only grown more terrifying. A roar. With a dragon roar that echoed through the heavens, tribulation clouds gathered in the sky, accompanied by thunderous booms. Your heart sank. Ah no, the tribulation for becoming an immortal. You still hadn't managed to kill the demonic dragon before it could break through. Now that the tribulation had arrived, continuing to fight the demonic dragon would make you targets of the immortal Dao's wrath. Thus, you shouted, Dad, retreat. You wanted to call your father, Jiang Fushan, to retreat together. After all, you thought, you could forego the dragon meat and find the formation's crack to leave the southern regions. Just as you were about to withdraw from the battlefield, you heard your father laugh heartily. A fight. Then, he charged at the demonic dragon, which was undergoing the tribulation. WTF. You watched your father, Jiang Fushan, in disbelief, your pupils contracting. This demonic dragon is undergoing the tribulation to become an immortal. Dad, are you crazy? Charging into the tribulation like that? At that moment, your father, Jiang Fushan, sent you a message. He told you to quickly find the formation's crack. He would do his best to stall the demonic dragon, preventing it from successfully crossing the tribulation. Now you understood your father, Jiang Fushan's intention. He wasn't being reckless. He had a plan. He knew very well that if the demonic dragon succeeded in crossing the tribulation and you hadn't found the formation's crack to leave the southern regions, you would all die at the demonic dragon's claws. Your father, Jiang Fushan, aimed to delay the demonic dragon's success, or at least cause it some trouble, slowing its breakthrough. This way, you and old Li would have more time to find the formation's crack. With this in mind, you glanced at your father, Jiang Fushan, and without hesitation, turned and ran to search for the formation's crack at the bottom of the desert. You thought that as long as you found the exit quickly, there might still be a chance to survive. If the demonic dragon succeeded in crossing the tribulation, survival would be slim. At that point, you might not withstand the demonic dragon's attacks. Of course, this wasn't your greatest fear. What you feared the most were the giant hand and foot that could cover the sky. After all, in previous instances, whenever someone in the southern regions became an immortal, the region was attacked. You weren't sure if the demonic dragon's tribulation would also attract powerful beings to attack the southern regions. Although the demonic dragon was captured by a powerful being to guard the ceiling formation, you thought its tribulation might still be unavoidable. As for the reason, the demonic dragon had always guarded the dragon egg, and it didn't seem to be its own. So, you thought that if the demonic dragon had devoured the dragon egg, it would have had the chance to become an immortal long ago. But it hadn't done so. You thought maybe it knew that crossing the tribulation to become an immortal would be dangerous. Of course, these were just your guesses. But regardless, you didn't want to take the risk. An hour passed in the blink of an eye, and the demonic dragon's tribulation continued, with the sounds of battle occasionally ringing out from within the tribulation. You knew this meant your father was still trying to stop the demonic dragon. By now, you had reunited with old Li, and the two of you were working together to dig through the yellow sands of the Desert of Death, searching for the formation's crack hidden at the bottom. Soon, you saw another patch of tribulation clouds forming in the sky. You frowned slightly, a sense of foreboding rising in your heart, because you felt that the tribulation clouds didn't seem to be summoned by the demonic dragon. They seemed to be targeting your father, Jiang Fushan. It didn't take long for you to realize your feeling was correct. It was your father, Jiang Fushan, who had summoned the tribulation for becoming an immortal. Having already reached the peak of tribulation crossing, he found an opportunity to break through to immortality during the battle. Old Li also noticed this and was extremely excited, thinking that if your father became an immortal, the demonic dragon, even if it reached the immortal realm, wouldn't be a threat. But your heart grew heavier. Originally, the demonic dragon's tribulation might have attracted powerful beings to intervene. But now, with your father also summoning the tribulation for becoming an immortal, there was no doubt the southern regions were doomed. You knew that everyone's lives were now on a countdown. Once the tribulation ended and the powerful beings intervened, there would be no chance left. So, You stopped paying attention to your father's battle. You called Old Lee to speed up the search for the formation's crack. 2 hours later, you saw a crack in the light shield at the bottom of the desert and breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, you found it in time. You shouted to your father, "Hey Dad, hurry, leave the southern regions." You weren't sure if it was possible to leave the southern regions during the tribulation, but you thought it was worth a try. But your father, Jiang Fushan, just looked at you, shook his head, and sighed, Today, I finally understand who I am." "Fenga, I can't leave." After saying this, your father, amidst the tribulation, waved his hand and threw you and the other cultivators of Spine Mountain into the formation's crack. All of you left the southern regions, leaving him behind alone. After leaving the southern regions, you and Old Lee, along with the others, arrived at the Dragon Tomb. As soon as you entered the Dragon Tomb, it felt like stepping into another world. Dragon corpses were scattered everywhere, and the atmosphere was eerie. Everyone was on high alert. But you stood there, stunned. You were still pondering your father's words. Today, I finally understand who I am. What did he mean? You wondered if your father, Jiang Fushan, had another identity. Was he not a pawn of the powerful beings? Or did he realize he was a pawn? Or was there some other possibility? For a moment, your thoughts were in turmoil. After a long time, you patted your forehead and stopped thinking about it. You decided to think about these things later. After all, this place was not safe. Soon after, several low-level cultivators from Spine Mountain were affected by the resentment in the area and attacked those around them. Fortunately, you were prepared and quickly subdued them, knocking them all unconscious. Then, you and the others, carrying the unconscious, moved forward into the distance. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, you just finished a battle, killing a vengeful dragon soul at the Tribulation Crossing realm. Such battles have occurred dozens of times in the past half-day. Fortunately, your combat strength is formidable, so the journey has been relatively safe. Shortly after the battle ended, you suddenly felt the void shaking, accompanied by the sound of dragon roars one after another. From these dragon roars, you seemed to sense a feeling of sorrow. You remained vigilant, thinking that the numerous dragon souls you had slain had attracted a large number of them to attack. Quickly, you realized you were wrong. Indeed, a large number of dragon souls appeared, but they did not attack you. Instead, they howled at the sky and then one by one turned into nothingness. What is going on? Are they performing a suicide show in front of you? You felt utterly confused. As more dragon souls turned into nothingness, the shaking of the void became more intense. Finally, with a boom, the void shattered, and the Dragon Tomb space collapsed. Instantly, you seemed to see light shining in. You saw a giant hand in the distance, grasping a demonic dragon, continuously extracting something from it. But the light lasted less than a moment. You were swept into a void storm. In less than a minute, all the cultivators from Spine Mountain perished, leaving only you and Old Lee struggling to survive. 2 minutes later, Old Lee was torn apart by the void storm. A day later, you also died in the void storm. You died at the age of 120. This simulation has ended. You can choose 2 rewards from this simulation: Toti Divine Body, Talent, Law of Thunder, Beginner, Divine Tao Cultivation. Toti Divine Body, Talent, costs 1000 origin values. Law of Thunder, Beginner, costs 50,000 origin values. Note: if already cultivated, it cannot be enhanced further. Divine Tao Cultivation, costs 20,000 origin values, includes Immortal Tao Cultivation, first level of Tribulation Crossing, and Martial Tao Cultivation, 5th level of Semi-Saint. Jiang Yifeng stared at the end of the simulation, momentarily unable to react. That was too sudden. How did he encounter a void storm? Jiang Yifeng had some understanding of void storms. In the Immortal Tao inheritance he had received earlier, there were memories related to this. He knew that a void storm was an extremely powerful disaster. Generally, void storms only occurred deep within space or when space shattered. And the power of a void storm, even the weakest kind, could threaten the life of an immortal realm expert. After finally leaving the southern regions, He died in a void storm. Jiang Yifeng was speechless, but he felt that this was not a coincidence. The simulator showed that the void shattered and space collapsed. Doesn't this prove that the Dragon Tomb was actually a small world? And before the space collapsed, why did those dragon souls all cry out in sorrow? Also, the simulation mentioned seeing a giant hand grasping a demonic dragon, extracting something from it. Could that demonic dragon be the one from the Desert of Death in the southern regions? As for what the simulator said was being extracted, Jiang Yifeng instinctively felt that this might be related to the collapse of the Dragon Tomb. But what exactly, he did not know. After all, Jiang Yifeng's current strength and knowledge were not enough to support more speculation. Forget it. Let's choose the rewards first. Jiang Yifeng stopped thinking about it and looked at the simulation rewards. There were 3 rewards this time. But the Law of Thunder, Beginner, had already been obtained through a deep simulation and could not be enhanced further. So, no need to consider it. I choose Toti Divine Body, Talent, and Divine Tao Cultivation. Ding, you have obtained Toti Divine Body, Talent, deducting 1000 origin values. Remaining origin values. Ding, you have obtained Divine Tao Cultivation, deducting 20,000 origin values. Remaining origin values. 2 minutes later, all rewards were extracted. Jiang Yifeng felt his cultivation level, and his sense of security increased significantly. However, this time he did not become overconfident. After all, this simulation had taught him many things. He clearly understood that until he reached the level of a great power, he could only struggle to survive. In fact, this simulation was not the longest in terms of time. But Jiang Yifeng felt that this was definitely the most eventful simulation so far. At the beginning of this simulation, his simulated self was arrogantly robbing the immortal arrival sect in the southern regions. Then he persuaded Old Li and others from Spine Mountain to consume the underground heavenly thunder. Finally, due to miscalculating the strength of the immortal arrival sect's branch, he encountered a group of immortal slaves at the 9th level of Tribulation Crossing. So, he used a one-time talent to leave the southern regions and arrived in the eastern regions. In the eastern regions, there was nothing special at first, just traveling around gathering information. Unable to obtain any information, he joined the Celestial Verdant sect. But later, when he broke through to Tribulation Crossing, Bai Moyu discovered he was not from the eastern regions. After revealing some information, Bai Moyu threw his simulated self back to the southern regions. Then he tried to return to the eastern regions but was thrown back into the southern regions by the Mystic Turtle, who warned him not to approach. He then returned to Spine Mountain, consumed the underground heavenly thunder, rescued Old Li and others, and finally ventured into the Desert of Death. After leaving the Desert of Death, he reached the Dragon Tomb, encountered the collapse of the Dragon Tomb space, and died in the Void Storm. It can be said that this simulation was truly full of ups and downs. But because of these experiences, Jiang Yifeng gained a lot of information. For example, the Great Abyssal Kingdom's branch of the Immortal Arrival sect has a 9th level Tribulation Crossing expert. Of course, this is no longer important, as Jiang Yifeng's current strength is no longer afraid of a 9th level Tribulation Crossing expert. But other information is extremely important. One of the key pieces of information was the southern region's coordinate map learned from Bai Moyu. Jiang Yifeng felt that this map was highly valuable. Although he left the Desert of Death and seemed to reach the Dragon Tomb instead of the northern regions, Jiang Yifeng felt that this did not mean the map was wrong. Perhaps the Dragon Tomb leads to the northern regions. After all, it is reasonable for there to be some barriers between each region. Besides the southern region's coordinate map, there was also the ceiling formation set up by Bai Moyu. The exact reason is unclear, but Jiang Yifeng speculated it was for poison cultivation. However, something went wrong, causing other great powers to intervene when an Immortal Realm expert appeared in the southern regions. Or perhaps the target of Bai Moyu's poison cultivation was not an Immortal Realm expert but an extraordinary genius who could escape the deadly strike of a great power. Additionally, he learned that the mystic turtle was also in cahoots with Baimoyu. The formation spirit of the ceiling formation mentioned in previous simulations was likely a lie by the mystic turtle. There was no formation spirit. The most crucial information was that besides Baimoyu, other great powers of the Nine Mystic Realm had betrayed, aiming to seize the fragments of the heavenly Tao from the Nine Mystic Realm. It can be said that this simulation brought Jiang Yifeng immense gains. Summarizing all this information made Jiang Yifeng feel a bit dizzy. He rubbed his forehead and stopped thinking. Finally, he fell asleep immediately. When Jiang Yifeng woke up, he realized it was already the next day. Stepping out of his room, he glanced at the unfinished 8th grade defensive formation. He kept pondering in his heart whether he should continue. Previously, he had planned to set up an 8th grade formation to protect the Jiang family mansion. That way, he could reveal his cultivation level. After all, in the southern regions, there was no one who could match him. Of course, it wasn't that he wanted to show off, but the simulator could no longer exchange ordinary mortal items for origin values. And the simulator required a lot of origin values to upgrade. Without robbing the immortal arrival sect, Jiang Yifeng couldn't think of a better way. So, he had initially planned to expose his cultivation and rob the immortal arrival sect of various extraordinary items to exchange for origin values. But now, Jiang Yifeng was a bit hesitant. Previously, he thought that as long as the southern regions didn't produce an immortal, those powerful figures wouldn't take action. But now, he wasn't so sure. After all, Baimoyu's words were very clear. Those powerful figures were plotting to seize the heavenly Tao of the Nine Mystic Realm. And Baimoyu also said that Jiang Yifeng had fragments of the heavenly Tao on him. Jiang Yifeng was worried that exposing himself too much might attract those powerful figures. But soon, he shook his head and sneered, overthinking. He felt he was worrying too much. In previous simulations, he had caused such a big commotion, robbing the immortal arrival sect everywhere, and no powerful figures took action. Jiang Yifeng thought that those powerful figures weren't always watching the southern regions. They probably only paid attention when they sensed a tribulation for becoming an immortal. Otherwise, it was hard to explain why they only took action when someone in the southern regions became an immortal. At the same time, Jiang Yifeng also thought that perhaps their conditions for seizing the heavenly Tao were related to someone becoming an immortal. After figuring this out, Jiang Yifeng didn't hesitate and continued to set up the unfinished 8th grade defensive formation. Not long after, he suddenly stopped what he was doing. He seemed to have thought of something, slapped his forehead, and muttered to himself, "No, setting up a complex 8th grade defensive formation takes too long." Jiang Yifeng realized that setting up a complex 8th grade formation required building multiple 8th grade formations to form a combination. Although such a formation was strong, it still couldn't compare to a 9th grade formation. He thought that spending a lot of time setting up a complex 8th grade formation was not as good as quickly improving his formation Tao in the simulation and then setting up a higher grade formation. This way, he might even save some time in reality. After figuring this out, Jiang Yifeng changed his approach and didn't set up a complex 8th grade formation. Instead, he decided to set up an ordinary 8th grade defensive formation. After all, the previous setup could still be used. Setting up an ordinary 8th grade defensive formation only required some minor adjustments and could be completed quickly. Half a day later, Jiang Yifeng clapped his hands and murmured, "That should do it. Next time when my formation Tao improves, I'll set up a higher grade one." The formation was completed without any dazzling scenes because Jiang Yifeng hadn't activated it. Now, the reason he set up this formation was simply because he had already set up a lot before and didn't want to waste it, so he casually modified it into an ordinary 8th grade formation. There's a high chance that after the next simulation, he would replace it. Moreover, the key point was that this formation couldn't defend against the tribulation crossing stage. If he showed off too much, it might attract unnecessary trouble. In the following days, Jiang Yifeng became idle again. Every day, he went to the pleasure house to listen to music, enjoying what he felt were his remaining peaceful days. A week passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang Yifeng returned to his room and silently chanted, "Start the simulation." Consuming one simulation attempt. Remaining attempts, 0. Drawing a purple talent costs 100 origin values. Drawing an orange talent with a chance costs 1000 origin values. Please choose. Choose to draw an orange talent with a chance. Ding. Deducting 1000 origin values, talent being randomly drawn. Remaining origin values. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the orange talent. Bildao Saint Hand. Bildao Saint Hand, you possess an innate, supreme talent in Bildao. Obtained one-time talent. Eye of the Heavens. Eye of the Heavens, after your death, you will transform into a giant eye overlooking all beings. Note, can only be maintained for 3 days. Bildao Saint Hand, just by looking at it, one could tell it was a talent for alchemists, and it was even an orange talent. It seemed that if he were to study pill refining technique, he would surely progress rapidly. Jiang Yifeng looked at this talent. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. Should he change his plan? In the end, he shook his head. Having made up his mind, although pill refining technique was good, it wasn't what he urgently needed right now. This time, he could keep this talent, but there was no need to start learning immediately. At this moment, the electronic voice of the simulator sounded again. Ding. Would you like to choose a talent from the talent pool? Talent pool contains talents: Thunderfire, True Spiritual Root, Absolute Rationality. Don't choose. Jiang Yifeng still chose to refuse. Although Absolute Rationality was good, Jiang Yifeng felt he should rely on himself. The most crucial point was that this time, Jiang Yifeng had a big plan for the simulation, and he didn't want the Absolute Rationality talent to interfere. After making his choice, he officially started the simulation. The 26th simulation begins. As soon as the words appeared on the simulator, Jiang Yifeng silently chanted, "Start deep simulation for 50 years." Yes, this was his big plan. This time, Jiang Yifeng wanted to personally experience the simulation process. No matter the good or the bad, he would accept it because he had deeply realized his shortcomings. His overly cautious personality was actually not suitable for cultivation. Once in battle, he always thought of only fighting when he had the advantage. How could such a person have the heart of a strong cultivator? So, Jiang Yifeng wanted to change. He wanted to gain more experience, more knowledge, and greater courage through deep simulation. As soon as Jiang Yifeng called for the deep simulation, the electronic voice of the simulator sounded. Ding. Starting deep simulation for 50 years, deducting origin values, remaining origin values. In an instant, Jiang Yifeng's consciousness entered the simulation. He looked around his room. Everything was exactly the same as in reality. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't sense the presence of the simulator in the simulation, he might have had a hard time distinguishing whether this was a simulation or reality. After a moment of reflection, Jiang Yifeng picked up a pen and wrote a letter to his family, then left Green Hills City. However, as soon as he stepped out of Green Hills City, he was confused. Which way is south? Fortunately, Jiang Yifeng wasn't someone who cared about saving face. Since he couldn't figure it out, he asked others for help. Eventually, with the help of an old farmer, he determined the direction. Flying southward at high speed, Jiang Yifeng soon encountered a situation. After passing through 2 cities, he was stopped. Seeing the man in black before him, Jiang Yifeng used his eye of insight to check his information. Chuxuan, 3rd level of Tribulation Crossing, Elder of the Immortal Arrival Sect. As expected, they are from the Immortal Arrival Sect. Jiang Yifeng wasn't surprised. Using the Eye of Insight to check was just to confirm. Now that their identity was confirmed, Jiang Yifeng felt a bit nervous. Although the simulation had shown that he could contend with a 9th level Tribulation Crossing expert, all his previous battles were just textual simulations. This kind of deep simulation battle was as real as actual combat. In reality, Jiang Yifeng had never experienced such a thing. The most he had done was travel alone using his cultivation, but he had never fought. Chuxuan saw Jiang Yifeng's nervous look and sneered with disdain. "Hey, with such little courage, you dare to cultivate on your own? You're courting death, With that, Chu Xuan casually struck at Jiang Yifeng with his palm. Seeing the incoming palm shadow, Jiang Yifeng resisted the urge to flee and awkwardly executed the silent destruction fist. As the primordial energy in Jiang Yifeng's body circulated, the silent destruction fist gathered momentum. Eventually, a fist shadow roared towards Chu Xuan's palm shadow. Time ticked by. In an instant, fist and palm collided. Chu Xuan's palm shadow was instantly shattered, but Jiang Yifeng's silent destruction fist continued its momentum towards Chu Xuan. Chu Xuan, who had initially looked down on Jiang Yifeng, suddenly panicked. Seeing the approaching fist shadow, Chu Xuan wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He could only muster all his spiritual energy and strike again, hoping to shatter Jiang Yifeng's silent destruction fist. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. Boom! Chu Xuan's palm shadow was shattered again, and the silent destruction fist hit Chu Xuan. Poof! Chu Xuan turned into a mist of blood. Even in death, Chu Xuan couldn't understand why his opponent was so strong. It seemed like Jiang Yifeng wasn't using spiritual energy, but the power was even greater. In Chu Xuan's eyes, Jiang Yifeng was just a first-level tribulation crossing cultivator. His cultivation was lower, and he had seemed so nervous earlier, looking like an easy target. This was why Chu Xuan had initially struck casually and underestimated Jiang Yifeng. It wasn't until Jiang Yifeng made his move that Chu Xuan realized something was wrong, as he discovered Jiang Yifeng wasn't using spiritual energy. But if it wasn't immortal Dao spiritual energy, what was it? Indeed, Chu Xuan didn't know that martial Dao could cultivate primordial energy, and perhaps even the immortal slaves of the immortal arrival sect didn't know. After all, the decline of martial Dao wasn't recent. If you trace it back, the decline of martial Dao predates the Great War in the Nine Mystic Realm. Besides a few old monsters, not many people knew the limits of martial Dao. Most people only knew the initial stages of martial Dao and were unaware that it could also cultivate primordial energy. Martial Dao cultivation was slow and difficult, requiring a lot of resources, and it didn't increase lifespan in the early stages. Reaching the condensing Yuan realm was quite challenging. So, even the powerful beings of the immortal realm didn't deliberately stop people from practicing martial Dao. After all, the early stages of martial Dao didn't increase lifespan, and the rare treasures were controlled by the immortal arrival sect. How far could a mortal get in martial Dao after decades of practice? In the end, Chu Xuan was a victim of the arrogance of the powerful beings of the immortal realm. Unfortunately, Chu Xuan would never know this in his lifetime. Of course, Jiang Yifeng didn't know these things either. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng was still staring blankly at his fist. So this is what fighting feels like? Although the sight of blood mist from death is a bit disgusting, but the feeling of winning a fight is really exhilarating. Jiang Yifeng marveled in his heart. After a brief reminiscence, he didn't linger and continued southward. In the following days, he encountered several immortal slaves from the immortal arrival sect. But with the experience of his first battle, Jiang Yifeng became more adept at fighting. After multiple battles, Jiang Yifeng found that he no longer felt fear before a fight. He couldn't help but smile. He had improved. This was the result he wanted from entering deep simulation. A few days later, Jiang Yifeng arrived at the Endless Sea. His purpose for leaving Green Hills City wasn't to kill immortal slaves and gain combat experience. Those were just side benefits. His real destination was the Endless Sea. Upon arriving, Jiang Yifeng took a deep breath and walked towards the sea. Soon, Jiang Yifeng saw towering waves rising in the Endless Sea. A mountain-sized mystic turtle emerged from the water. Jiang Yifeng knew the mystic turtle was with Bai Moyu. They were here to cultivate poison in the southern regions. But he didn't mention these matters. Instead, he looked at the mystic turtle and shouted out the prepared script. "Senior, I know you are also forced into this. We are all on the same side, all wanting to escape from the southern regions. I hope you can help me out. I have some knowledge of formations and wish to study the ceiling formation here." After Jiang Yifeng shouted these words, the mystic turtle indeed didn't make things difficult for him, only giving him a deep look. Then, Jiang Yifeng finally arrived at the small island in the endless sea as he had wished. After thanking the mystic turtle, he headed towards the depths of the island. This was Jiang Yifeng's original plan. This deep simulation was primarily to improve his formation Dao, because whether in simulation or reality, improving his formation Dao was the most beneficial. Jiang Yifeng believed that setting up a formation capable of resisting tribulation crossing experts in reality would protect the Jiang family mansion. In the simulation, having stronger formation Dao abilities might allow him to repair the life-saving formation left by Senior Liu Aya. If he could elevate his formation Dao to a higher level, he might even be able to break the ceiling formation. So, improving his formation Dao was the most crucial part of this deep simulation for Jiang Yifeng. Time flew by, and 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. During these 10 years, Jiang Yifeng successfully reached the level of a 9th grade formation master. This deepened his understanding of formations. When he looked at the ceiling formation again, he was filled with awe. This formation was more advanced than he had imagined. Now that he was a 9th grade formation master, one step away from becoming an immortal formation master, he could only see a small part of the formation talismans in the ceiling formation. Sigh. Finally, Jiang Yifeng sighed. He wondered what level of formation master Bai Moyu was to set up this formation. If he could learn formations from Bai Moyu, his progress would surely be rapid. Unfortunately, Bai Moyu's stance was very ambiguous. Learning formations from him was almost impossible. After taking a deep look at the ceiling formation, Jiang Yifeng didn't stay in the endless sea any longer. He felt that breaking through to an immortal formation master wasn't something he could achieve in this simulation. So, he decided to try other things. After leaving the endless sea, Jiang Yifeng headed north. A few days later, he returned to Green Hills City. After a brief reunion with his father, Jiang Yifeng left again. This time, his destination was the west. It's worth mentioning that during this small gathering, Jiang Yifeng left a storage ring for his father. Inside the storage ring, there were a large number of spirit stones. However, Jiang Yifeng didn't explain this directly, instead saying that his father would understand in a few years. Leaving Green Hills City, Jiang Yifeng headed west. Eventually, he arrived at the Forest of 10,000 Swords. Seeing the pervasive killing intent in the forest, Jiang Yifeng didn't hesitate and walked straight in. As soon as he stepped into the outskirts of the Forest of 10,000 Swords, he sensed the surrounding killing intent surging towards him. However, Jiang Yifeng himself already possessed a minor mastery of killing intent. The killing intent in the outskirts of the forest didn't affect him much. So, he continued forward, heading deeper into the forest. As Jiang Yifeng ventured further into the Forest of 10,000 Swords, he could clearly feel the killing intent around him growing stronger. After a long while, he stopped. He had reached his limit. Jiang Yifeng felt that if he went any further, he would lose control of his rationality. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng's eyes were bloodshot, but the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, revealing a smile. Because he could already see a white tiger's corpse in the distance. This proved that he had reached the depths of the Forest of 10,000 Swords. He remembered that in previous simulations, even with minor mastery of killing intent, he couldn't reach the depths of the forest. Entering would mean losing consciousness completely. Even with absolute rationality, it couldn't be avoided. But this time, he endured it. Jiang Yifeng understood that it wasn't his mental strength that had improved. It was his cultivation that had advanced, and his resistance to killing intent had also strengthened. In the following days, Jiang Yifeng stayed in the Forest of 10,000 Swords. He trained in killing intent and honed his willpower. 14 years passed in a blink of an eye. Jiang Yifeng was still comprehending killing intent when the Forest of 10,000 Swords welcomed another visitor. Wu Yao Dao arrived at the forest and saw Jiang Yifeng from afar, immersed in the killing intent. His expression turned serious, and he murmured to himself, "Is it him?" Jiang Yifeng, who had been comprehending killing intent, also sensed Wu Yao Dao's arrival. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng realized that 24 years had passed in the simulation. This made him sigh, feeling that time flies in cultivation. Soon, Wu Yaodao cautiously looked at Jiang Yifeng and cupped his hands from a distance. I am the White Tiger. May I ask which Taoist friend you are the reincarnation of? Wu Yaodao didn't approach, nor did he engage in small talk with Jiang Yifeng, but instead inquired about his origins. Although Wu Yaodao's current strength was not high, only at the Golden Body realm in martial Dao cultivation, his vision from his past life remained, allowing him to roughly gauge Jiang Yifeng's current cultivation. In Wu Yaodao's eyes, Jiang Yifeng had cultivated from immortal to the 5th level of semi-saint in martial Dao and the 1st level of tribulation crossing in immortal Dao in just over 20 years. This was beyond the description of talent. He could only think that Jiang Yifeng, like himself, was the reincarnation of a powerful figure, which explained the rapid progress. Because of this, Wu Yaodao didn't approach Jiang Yifeng. After all, he didn't know if they were friend or foe. Of course, Wu Yaodao wasn't afraid of Jiang Yifeng either. The Forest of 10,000 Swords was essentially his domain. His past life's corpse was still here, and if he wished, he could borrow the killing intent of his past life to fight at any time. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yifeng was momentarily stunned. Seeing Wu Yaodao's appearance, he almost couldn't help but laugh. He knew this misunderstanding was significant. So, Jiang Yifeng didn't deceive him but tried to explain, stating that his current cultivation was due to good luck and talent. After explaining, Jiang Yifeng even requested Wu Yaodao to help him leave the southern regions. However, after hearing Jiang Yifeng's words, Wu Yaodao snorted coldly. Do you take me for a fool, Taoist friend? Then he slowly retreated, moving away from Jiang Yifeng. Once he reached a safe distance, Wu Yaodao passed through the killing intent of the Forest of 10,000 Swords and left. Seeing this, Jiang Yifeng was quite speechless. He was telling the truth. Why wouldn't he believe him? Can't people have a bit more trust in each other? Sigh. In the end, all his words turned into a sigh. Jiang Yifeng's plan to rely on Wu Yaodao to leave the southern regions failed. Actually, just now, Jiang Yifeng had considered pretending to be the reincarnation of a powerful figure. But besides Mo Jingshan and Liu Yuya, he didn't know the names and deeds of other powerful figures. And since these two had already left the southern regions, pretending to be them and seeking Wu Yaodao's help to leave the southern regions seemed unconvincing. Glancing in the direction where Wu Yaodao had left, Jiang Yifeng murmured, I still have to rely on myself. So, he didn't think much more and continued to train in killing intent. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, another 10 years passed. Jiang Yifeng finally elevated his minor mastery of killing intent to a major mastery. This significantly enhanced his strength once again. Moreover, Jiang Yifeng felt he could venture a bit deeper into the Forest of 10,000 Swords. This made him quite excited. He even began to fantasize about passing through the Forest of 10,000 Swords and leaving the southern regions. Unfortunately, while the idea was good, reality was harsher. Jiang Yifeng only took a dozen steps before being overwhelmed by the killing intent, unable to proceed further. Clearly, the deeper he went, the greater the increase in killing intent. Even though his understanding of killing intent had improved, it was still impossible to pass through the Forest of 10,000 Swords. Feeling the current situation, Jiang Yifeng thought for a moment and then left the forest. He felt that with his current cultivation and killing intent strength, it was difficult to leave the Forest of 10,000 Swords in this simulation. Since that was the case, he decided to start another plan. After leaving the Forest of 10,000 Swords, Jiang Yifeng began to fly aimlessly in the southern regions. That's right, Jiang Yifeng didn't have a specific destination. His goal was simple, to use this deep simulation to map out the entire southern regions. After all, in reality, he had hardly left Green Hills City and was very unfamiliar with the southern regions. This was actually one of the plans Jiang Yifeng had thought of from the beginning. He knew that he would soon take action in reality. Understanding the entire geography of the southern regions was part of his preparation. During his aimless wandering, Jiang Yifeng found Spine Mountain. By this time, it was the 37th year since the simulation began. Jiang Yifeng met his father, Jiang Fushan, at Spine Mountain. At this time, Jiang Fushan's cultivation had reached the peak of the 8th layer of tribulation, ready to break through to the 9th level at any moment. Jiang Yifeng knew this was due to the spirit stones he had left for his father earlier. It seemed that soon, his father Jiang Fushan would break through to the 9th level of tribulation crossing. Jiang Yifeng couldn't help but smile. After spending a few days with Jiang Fushan, Jiang Yifeng left again. During this small gathering, he informed Jiang Fushan that the formation left by Senior Liu Aya had issues. He advised his father and old Li to prepare early. In fact, in this simulation, Jiang Yifeng had time to help prepare the formation at Spine Mountain. Although it might not be possible to repair it completely, there was a good chance of withstanding another heavenly thunder, just like last time. However, Jiang Yifeng didn't want to waste the time of this deep simulation. After all, the cultivation gained from deep simulation couldn't be directly brought out. Moreover, Jiang Yifeng hoped to venture into the Desert of Death earlier in this simulation. This was also why he had deliberately left resources for his father, Jiang Fushan, earlier. Why did he want to venture into the Desert of Death earlier? The reason was simple. He was worried that the Dragon Tomb space might collapse again if too much time passed. He didn't want to encounter another void storm. Although he suspected that the last collapse of the Dragon Tomb space might have been related to some extraction from the demonic dragon by a powerful being from the immortal realm, Jiang Yifeng also couldn't rule out the possibility that the Dragon Tomb space had simply existed for too long and collapsed on its own. So, venturing into the Desert of Death a bit earlier wouldn't hurt. As for the demonic dragon guarding the Desert of Death, with Jiang Yifeng's current strength, it was no longer a significant obstacle. After leaving Spine Mountain, Jiang Yifeng continued to travel through the southern regions. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 years had passed. Jiang Yifeng had almost traversed every inhabited place in the southern regions, and he had memorized the entire map of the region. All this back and forth had taken only a few years. This made Jiang Yifeng feel that while the southern regions might seem vast to mortals, to him now, it was quite small, even a bit cramped. Of course, Jiang Yifeng didn't know that the current southern regions were just a small part of the original southern regions. The rest had long been shattered in wars or turned into desolate places like the Desert of Death. At this moment, it had been 41 years since Jiang Yifeng entered deep simulation. He knew that the eruption of heavenly thunder beneath Spine Mountain was imminent. So, without hesitation, he headed straight for Spine Mountain. By coincidence, when he returned to Spine Mountain, he saw the formation set up by Senior Liu Aya collapsing. Heavenly thunder erupted from the ground. Fortunately, Jiang Yifeng had previously warned Jiang Fushan. Old Li and the others were well prepared, so the cultivators of Spine Mountain suffered no casualties. After reuniting with the people of Spine Mountain, Jiang Yifeng proposed a bold plan to break through the Desert of Death. Everyone turned to look at Jiang Fushan. After all, Jiang Yifeng hadn't stayed long at Spine Mountain this time, have no prestige, and few knew his true strength. In contrast, Jiang Fushan was now a 9th level tribulation crossing expert. Naturally, everyone hoped Jiang Fushan would make the decision. However, Jiang Fushan had no reason to oppose Jiang Yifeng's proposal. Thus, the plan to break through the Desert of Death was approved without any objections. Months passed in the blink of an eye. Once everyone was in their best condition, they marched boldly toward the Desert of Death. Upon arriving at the Desert of Death, Jiang Yifeng didn't immediately team up with his father to confront the demonic dragon. This time, he sneaked into the dragon's lair alone. Reaching the southwest corner, he punched out. A dragon egg appeared before Jiang Yifeng. Looking at the dragon egg, Jiang Yifeng licked his lips. Although the simulator had shown that he had eaten it before, those were just words. Should he satisfy his craving first? Indeed, Jiang Yifeng felt that the dragon egg no longer had any significant benefits for him. Even if he ate it, it would only satisfy his appetite. After all, during the previous simulation, when he ate the dragon egg, his cultivation was still very low, and it didn't provide any extraordinary boost, just expanded his chi. As for the demonic dragon being able to enhance its bloodline by consuming the dragon egg, Jiang Yifeng thought that was just a bloodline enhancement. but bloodline enhancements were for the same species, and he was human, not part of the dragon clan, so it was useless to him. Ultimately, Jiang Yifeng tried to put the dragon egg into his storage ring. To his surprise, it went in. Since storage rings couldn't hold living things, Jiang Yifeng wasn't sure if the dragon egg counted as a living thing. It seemed that it wasn't, as it hadn't started to hatch yet. Since the dragon egg could be stored in the ring, he didn't need to worry anymore. He decided to take it with him and cook it later when he had some free time. Even if it didn't boost his cultivation, it would surely make a delicious meal. After finishing everything, Jiang Yifeng didn't delay any longer. He began to team up with his father, Jiang Fushan, to fight the demonic dragon. But this time, even with Jiang Yifeng and Jiang Fushan joining forces, they could only slightly suppress the demonic dragon. They didn't have a significant advantage. The reason was that Jiang Fushan's strength in this simulation wasn't as strong as last time. And although Jiang Yifeng was stronger, his combat experience was lacking. This made Jiang Yifeng doubt if he was the same person as shown in the previous simulation. Why did the previous simulation show that he and his father, Jiang Fushan, had suppressed the demonic dragon together? He even thought he had played a major role. It seemed Jiang Yifeng had overestimated himself, or maybe he was just shameless. Perhaps he had deliberately overlooked something back then. The simulation text showed that he thought he had played a major role. He had just missed the words thought. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, Jiang Yifeng's combat experience kept improving. At this point, he and Jiang Fushan finally managed to completely suppress the demonic dragon. It wouldn't be long before they could kill it. Sensing the danger, the demonic dragon fled rapidly toward its lair. Seeing the demonic dragon's actions, Jiang Yifeng touched his storage ring and sneered inwardly. "Ha, little one, your moves have already been predicted by me." Half a day later, the demonic dragon was on its last breath. At this moment, Old Li sent a message saying he had found a crack in the formation. Jiang Yifeng glanced at the demonic dragon, but his hands didn't stop, gathering all his strength into one punch. This punch had no reservations. Once unleashed, Jiang Yifeng felt he might instantly lose his combat power. But he still unleashed it. Jiang Yifeng himself felt this was the craziest thing he had ever done. Of course, this was also because Old Li had found the crack in the formation. Jiang Yifeng knew that even if he lost his combat power, his father would protect him. And the purpose of this all-out punch was very simple. He just wanted to eat dragon meat. Never underestimate a foodie's pursuit of delicious food. Carrying immense primordial energy, killing intent, and the silent destruction fist infused with the laws of thunder, Jiang Yifeng unleashed his punch. As soon as the punch was thrown, Jiang Yifeng went limp and fell from the sky. Fortunately, Jiang Fushan caught him in time, otherwise, the desert would have suffered. The demonic dragon, already on its last breath, was hit by Jiang Yifeng's punch loaded with buffs. A mournful cry echoed. The massive body fell. After a few twitches, it stopped moving. In the desert of death, other demonic pythons, seeing the demonic dragon's demise, fled in all directions. For a moment, the cultivators of Spine Mountain were all safe. At this moment, everyone looked at Jiang Yifeng in astonishment. They had known Jiang Yifeng was strong, but they never expected him to be this powerful. The demonic dragon didn't die at Jiang Fushan's hands but at Jiang Yifeng's. Jiang Yifeng ignored the others' gazes. He looked at the demonic dragon's corpse, his eyes sparkling. He was already thinking about 1,000 ways to cook the dragon meat. Grilling, stir-frying, steaming. Which method would be the most delicious? So, he quickly asked his father, Jiang Fushan, to help cut up the demonic dragon's body and store it in the storage ring. As for why Jiang Yifeng didn't do it himself, Jiang Yifeng would never admit it was due to exhaustion. He just wanted to lie down. Twilight descended over the desert of death. The people of Spine Mountain had already gathered around a bonfire. Even Old Li, who had been searching for gaps in the formation, had returned to the main group. After all, the demonic dragon guarding the place was dead. There was no sign of the life-threatening heavenly thunder descending anytime soon. With plenty of time to find a way out through the formation's cracks, everyone relaxed considerably. Jiang Yifeng was generous. instructing his father Jiang Fushan to distribute dozens of pounds of dragon meat for everyone to roast and eat. He himself held a few hundred pounds of roasted dragon meat, gnawing on it voraciously. As the dragon meat went down, Jiang Yifeng clearly felt his earlier exhaustion quickly replenished. Moreover, through the devouring power of his totally divine body, he felt his martial Dao cultivation improve after digesting all the dragon meat. This was no surprise to Jiang Yifeng. After all, he had fought so hard to kill the demonic dragon, partly to satisfy his appetite. But more importantly, he wanted to use the totally divine body to enhance his martial Dao cultivation by eating dragon meat. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Jiang Yifeng hadn't moved an inch, eating continuously for 3 whole months. A demonic dragon several thousand feet long was finally reduced to just 1 dragon leg by him. Of course, his gains from eating this way were immense. His martial Dao cultivation had directly advanced from the 5th level of semi-saint to the 8th level of semi-saint. Such a speed of improvement was simply unimaginable. It far surpassed the rate of martial Dao advancement in any of his previous simulations by hundreds of times. However, after reaching the 8th level of semi-saint, the effect of eating dragon meat on his cultivation had significantly slowed. Jiang Yifeng thought this was normal. After all, the demonic dragon's cultivation was at the 9th level of tribulation crossing. His current martial Dao level, the 8th level of semi-saint, corresponded to the 8th layer of tribulation crossing in the immortal Dao. He was only 1 minor realm away from the demonic dragon. At this level, it was reasonable that eating more dragon meat wouldn't result in rapid improvement. Since he could no longer improve quickly, Jiang Yifeng decided not to eat the remaining dragon leg. No matter how delicious the food, eating it continuously for several months would make anyone sick of it. Besides, Jiang Yifeng thought the dragon meat's taste was just average. At that moment, Jiang Yifeng noticed the dragon egg in his storage ring. He licked his lips, thinking it was time for a change of flavor. Half an hour later, the fragrant steamed dragon egg was ready. After savoring it carefully, Jiang Yifeng gave an honest evaluation. The dragon egg tasted better than the demonic dragon meat. No wonder it had a higher grade dragon clan bloodline. After finishing the dragon egg, Jiang Yifeng's strength did not improve as he had expected. However, shortly after, he seemed to feel his blood momentarily turn golden. Jiang Yifeng was taken aback. Could his bloodline be changing? Was he being assimilated by the dragon clan bloodline, turning into a dragon man? Thinking of this, Jiang Yifeng quickly examined himself. But after a thorough check, he found everything normal. His blood was still bright red. The earlier sensation seemed like an illusion. This made Jiang Yifeng breathe a sigh of relief. Although he thought being assimilated by the dragon clan bloodline might enhance his strength, he still wanted to remain human. After finishing the dragon egg, Jiang Yifeng brushed off the sand on his body, looked at the people waiting for him in the distance, and smiled. Sorry to keep you all waiting. In fact, the formation gap in the Desert of Death had been found by Old Li and others 2 months ago. But because Jiang Yifeng was busy eating dragon meat to enhance his strength, no one had left. After all, if Jiang Yifeng didn't leave, Jiang Fushan naturally wouldn't either. And the 2 of them were the strongest among the group. No one knew what dangers awaited after leaving the southern regions. Everyone knew that following the strong was the best choice. So, it wasn't that others didn't want to leave, they were just considering their own safety. Without saying much, Jiang Yifeng called out to everyone and headed towards the formation crack at the bottom of the Desert of Death. Soon, everyone entered the crack one after another, leaving the southern regions. After everyone had left, Jiang Yifeng and his father Jiang Fushan stepped towards the formation crack together. But the next scene left Jiang Yifeng horrified. He saw his father Jiang Fushan's figure gradually blur and seem to dissipate as he approached the ceiling formation. Jiang Fushan also looked puzzled as he observed his own transformation. But soon, his ears twitched as if he heard something. His puzzled expression gradually faded, replaced by understanding. Finally, before completely disappearing, Jiang Fushan smiled at Jiang Yifeng and said, "Fenga, keep going." With that, Jiang Fushan's figure completely blurred and vanished. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng was in a daze. Seeing his father suddenly disappear, Jiang Yifeng felt a surge of sorrow, his eyes moistening. But he knew he was just in a simulation. He kept reminding himself of this. After taking a deep breath, Jiang Yifeng forced himself to calm down. He began to ponder what was happening. Why did this happen? Wasn't his father supposed to attract the attention of immortal realm experts only when he was about to ascend? Jiang Yifeng couldn't understand why this was happening. Suddenly, he muttered, "No, something's wrong." He realized that there was no giant hand or foot covering the sky this time. So, his father's disappearance shouldn't be due to an expert's intervention. But what was the reason? Why did his father dissipate just as he was about to leave the southern regions? Was there some other force preventing his father from leaving? Jiang Yifeng couldn't think of an answer. He felt there must be a lot of information he hadn't yet uncovered. He kept this matter in mind and stopped thinking about it. Finally, he stepped into the formation crack. As the saying goes, misfortunes never come singly. Just as Jiang Yifeng stepped into the formation crack and entered the dragon tomb, he sensed something was wrong and exclaimed, "WTF, a void storm." Although Jiang Yifeng had never seen a void storm, he had read about it in the Immortal Tao Inheritance. He believed what he saw was indeed a void storm. So, Jiang Yifeng turned and ran, trying to escape back to the southern regions through the formation crack. Unfortunately, it was too late. When he crossed through the formation crack, he had already entered the void storm. At this moment, he was being swept away by the storm, unable to move freely. He could only drift in the storm until death or until the void storm dissipated on its own. After struggling for a while, Jiang Yifeng let out a bitter laugh. It seemed this simulation was about to end again. However, Jiang Yifeng didn't give up completely. He began to use the void storm to temper his body. He thought that even if the simulation was about to end, any improvement was still an improvement. At this moment, he also pondered the cause of the dragon tomb's collapse and the resulting void storm. This time, there was no expert intervention, no one ascending, yet the dragon tomb still collapsed. Suddenly, Jiang Yifeng seemed to realize something. He felt that all of this might be related to the demonic dragon and that dragon egg. Perhaps if the demonic dragon died and the dragon egg was gone, the dragon tomb space would collapse. Jiang Yifeng believed that his hypothesis had at least a 90% chance of being correct. This time, it was Jiang Yifeng himself who killed the demonic dragon and ate the dragon egg. In the previous simulation, the dragon egg was devoured by the demonic dragon. But in the end, the demonic dragon was captured by a powerful being from the immortal realm, seemingly extracting something from it. It was highly likely that it had already died. In both simulations, the conditions of the demonic dragon's death and the dragon egg being gone were met. So, the dragon tomb space collapsed, causing a void storm. However, in previous simulations where he had visited the dragon tomb, the demonic dragon was fine, the dragon egg was safe, and the dragon tomb space did not collapse. Therefore, Jiang Yifeng was almost certain that the collapse of the dragon tomb space was related to the demonic dragon and the dragon egg. After figuring it out, even though his body was still being attacked by the void storm, Jiang Yifeng's mood eased a bit. He felt that although this simulation was about to end, it had paved a way for the future. He already knew the reason for the collapse of the dragon tomb space. In the next simulation, he wouldn't make the same mistake again. Afterward, Jiang Yifeng stopped thinking about it and focused entirely on resisting the void storm. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Jiang Yifeng was on the brink of death. He knew he didn't have much time left. So, he steeled his heart and used the Toti divine body to swallow a large amount of the void storm. In an instant, Jiang Yifeng's body was torn apart. But he didn't die immediately. His nascent soul escaped from his body. At the same time, Jiang Yifeng triggered his random enlightenment talent. He seemed to sense the fury of the wind and grasped a sliver of the law of wind. But this enlightenment came too late. Soon, Jiang Yifeng's nascent soul was also shredded by the void storm. At the moment of his death, a giant eye appeared out of nowhere in the chaos, overlooking everyone. The appearance of this giant eye caused the strong beings in the 9 mystic realm, the immortal realm, and even many distant realms to be on high alert. Everyone was extremely vigilant. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng's consciousness appeared above the giant eye. He understood that he was already dead. This must be the one-time talent eye of the heavens triggered by the simulator. He knew he only had 3 days. So, he didn't hesitate and began to try to control the eye of the heavens. Soon, he discovered that he couldn't move the giant eye, but he could control its perspective. However, Jiang Yifeng felt that this was enough. He began to use the eye of the heavens to observe the entire world, wanting to see the world's true face. He also wanted to know the situation in the immortal realm, the 9 mystic realm, and the southern regions. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ding! Deep simulation ended. You died at the age of 63. This simulation has ended. You can exchange for 2 rewards from this simulation: Pill Dao Saint Hand, Talent, Divine Dao Cultivation, 9th Grade Formation Master, Demonic Dragon Meat, 1000 kilograms, True Meaning of the Killing Dao, Great Accomplishment, Law of Wind, Beginner. Pill Dao Saint Hand, Talent, Price 1000. Origin Values. Divine Dao Cultivation, Price 20,000. Origin Values. Note, includes Immortal Dao Cultivation, Tribulation Crossing Realm 1st Level, and Martial Dao Cultivation, Half Saint Realm 8th Level. 9th Grade Formation Master, Price 100,000. Origin Values. Demonic Dragon Meat, 1000 kilograms, Price 10 million. Origin Values. Note, Demonic Dragon Meat with a trace of True Dragon Bloodline. True Meaning of the Killing Dao, Great Accomplishment, Price 1 million. Origin Values. Law of Wind, Beginner, Price 100,000. Origin Values. Jiang Yifeng's consciousness returned to reality. He didn't have time to look at the simulation rewards. At this moment, his mind was still filled with the scenes he saw with the eye of the heavens in the last 3 days. During those 3 days, Jiang Yifeng saw the entire 9 mystic realm. Just as Bai Moyu had said before, it was shattered. Now, outside the southern regions, there was still war everywhere. The cultivators of the 9 mystic realm had not given up. They were still fighting against the people of the immortal realm in various places. Jiang Yifeng also learned that outside the dragon tomb was indeed the northern regions, but it was already a desolate wasteland. In those 3 days, Jiang Yifeng didn't see any human figures there. In the western regions past the Forest of 10,000 Swords, Jiang Yifeng saw that some people from the 9 mystic realm were still struggling to hold on, fighting fiercely with the people of the immortal realm. Lastly, in the eastern regions past the Valley of Flames, it couldn't really be called the eastern regions, it was more like the Great Wilderness. Jiang Yifeng confirmed that Bai Moyu was right. The eastern regions no longer existed. It had been severed and moved to the south of the southern regions. However, perhaps because the eastern regions had been severed, Jiang Yifeng saw that the Great Wilderness outside the Valley of Flames was relatively safer. Although there were battles there too, they were much more subdued. Besides the situation around the southern regions, during those days, Jiang Yifeng also used the eye of the heavens to see many further places. What he saw was beyond his imagination. He didn't know what kind of world this was. It was filled with bloodshed, violence, and war everywhere. And the culprits behind all this were from the immortal realm. The immortal realm was not only invading the 9 mystic realm, but its people were also invading other realms simultaneously. The strength of the immortal realm was even greater than Jiang Yifeng had originally imagined. But how strong it was, Jiang Yifeng still wasn't sure. After all, the eye of the heavens didn't give him the ability to discern strength, and his original eye of insight had its limits. He couldn't see through powerful beings, not even those like Shen Yushan, who was a half-step powerful being. Of course, seeing question marks was proof of great strength. But the eye of the heavens only allowed him to see for 3 days. To avoid wasting time, Jiang Yifeng didn't check each individual's strength. After recalling the information he gathered with the eye of the heavens, Jiang Yifeng couldn't understand why the immortal realm was doing this. They weren't just invading the 9 mystic realm, they were invading many other realms as well. However, Jiang Yifeng thought this might be a good thing for him. After all, the 9 mystic realm wasn't fighting alone. If there was a chance to unite the other worlds invaded by the immortal realm, it would undoubtedly form a powerful force. At this moment, Jiang Yifeng remembered what Bai Moyu had said, that the powerful beings of the Nine Mystic Realm had all betrayed them. In the end, he shook his head and mocked himself. If our own people can betray us, what good is it to unite with outsiders? Jiang Yifeng stopped thinking about it. He felt that strength was the key. Improving his own strength was the true path. So, he turned his attention to the simulation rewards. Since this was a deep simulation, Jiang Yifeng already mastered the 9th grade Formation Master, true meaning of the Killing Tao, Great Accomplishment, and Law of Wind, Beginner, so he didn't need to exchange for them. The only things left were talents, cultivation, and demonic dragon meat. Actually, Jiang Yifeng had anticipated that demonic dragon meat would appear in the rewards. He had deliberately not eaten it all in the simulation to see how many origin values it would require for exchange. If it wasn't too expensive, he would choose the demonic dragon meat. After all, this stuff could be used not only by himself but also by others, and it could be reused in future simulations. Unfortunately, it was too expensive. In the end, Jiang Yifeng made his choice. I choose Pill Dao Saint Hand, Talent, and Divine Dao Cultivation. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Pill Dao Saint Hand, Talent, deducting 1000 origin values, remaining origin values. Obtain Divine Dao Cultivation, deducting 20,000 origin values, remaining origin values. As the simulator's notification sounded, Jiang Yifeng's cultivation continued to rise. A few seconds later, the enhancement was complete. After sensing his progress, Jiang Yifeng pursed his lips. This simulation's cultivation improvement was a bit too little, only raising his martial Dao by 3 minor realms. Jiang Yifeng felt a bit disappointed. However, he knew that this time it was a deep simulation. He hadn't spent much effort on improving his realms. The main improvements were in the comprehension of laws and formations. These two enhancements had actually significantly boosted his overall combat power. Moreover, this simulation had allowed him to memorize the entire map of the southern regions. This was also a potential gain, making future simulations and real-life actions more convenient and confident. Besides, this simulation finally gave him real combat experience. He was no longer the person who would think of running away at the sight of a fight. Jiang Yifeng understood that this mental improvement might be the biggest gain from this simulation. At this moment, he noticed that his personal panel had changed once again. Host, Jiang Yifeng. Talents, Eye of Insight, Random Enlightenment, Formation Dao Genius, Yimu Divine Body, Child of Fortune, Heaven Rewards Diligence, 5 Elements Heavenly Spiritual Root, Love Saint, Toti Divine Body, Pill Dao Saint Hand, Divine Dao Cultivation, Tribulation Crossing Realm First Layer, Immortal Dao, Half Saint Realm 8th Layer, Martial Dao, Secondary Cultivation, 9th Grade Formation Master Cultivation Techniques, Heavenly Profound Art, Immortal Dao, Devouring Spirit Art, Immortal Dao, War God Art, Martial Dao, Techniques Practiced, Wind Chasing Art, Great Accomplishment, Silent Destruction Fist, Small Accomplishment. Laws and Mysteries, True Meaning of the Killing Tao, Great Accomplishment, Law of Thunder, Beginner, Law of Wind, Beginner. Possessions, Unknown Immortal Tao Inheritance, Memory, Spirit Stones, Pieces, War God Art, Heavenly Profound Art, Wind Chasing Art, Breath Concealing Talisman, Teleportation Jade Plate. Combat Experience Rating, 5 stars. Note, full score is 10 stars. Jiang Yifeng looked at his personal panel, satisfied with most of it. But what was the meaning of this newly appeared combat experience rating? He had undergone deep simulations for decades, participated in numerous battles, and even killed a demonic dragon. Yet he hadn't even reached the passing line. Jiang Yifeng felt quite indignant. He wanted to argue with the simulator. In the end, he decided to let it go. As a magnanimous person, he chose not to bicker with an emotionless system. After organizing his gains, Jiang Yifeng lay on the bed and fell asleep within seconds. Such a long period of deep simulation had indeed left his spirit somewhat exhausted. Jiang Yifeng slept for 2 whole days. On the 3rd day, Jiang Yifeng woke up, stretched, and walked out of his room. As soon as he stepped out, he instinctively used his cultivation to rise into the air. This startled the few servants living in the same courtyard as Jiang Yifeng. In an instant, Little Peach and the other two servants all knelt on the ground. They shouted, "Young master has become an immortal." Seeing this, Jiang Yifeng slapped his forehead. Damn, I forgot this is reality. He hadn't intentionally shown his cultivation. It was just that decades of deep simulation had changed his living habits and ways of doing things. Jiang Yifeng realized he needed to correct this quickly. After all, in the simulation, dying didn't matter, it wouldn't affect reality, so he could be reckless. But in reality, he absolutely couldn't do that. Even though the immortal slaves of the immortal arrival sect posed no threat to him, he still had to consider the safety of the Jiang family. Moreover, Jiang Yifeng wasn't sure if the powerful beings of the immortal realm would investigate the southern regions. Although he hadn't encountered them in the simulation, he couldn't be sure that those powerful beings had never observed the southern regions. What if his previous simulations were just lucky, avoiding the powerful beings' scrutiny? He had fragments of the heavenly Tao that those powerful beings wanted. So, Jiang Yifeng thought it best not to reveal his cultivation unless necessary in reality. After all, reality wasn't a simulation, life only comes once, and he couldn't afford to experiment. Even after decades of deep simulation, Jiang Yifeng was still the same Jiang Yifeng. Though he wouldn't run away before a fight anymore, his cautious nature hadn't changed much. But, although Jiang Yifeng thought this way, now that he had already used his cultivation and been seen by these servants, what should he do? Jiang Yifeng's thoughts were complicated. He pondered, should I silence them? But these people were his trusted aides. Otherwise, they wouldn't be living in the same small courtyard with him. Suddenly, Jiang Yifeng chuckled. Forget it, they're just a few servants. Who would believe them if they spoke out? And even if they did believe, what could they do? He wasn't afraid of the immortal arrival sect anymore, only the powerful beings of the immortal realm. Could these servants possibly get the message to those powerful beings? So Jiang Yifeng thought it wasn't a big deal. Finally, he made a shushing gesture to the servants and said with a smile, "This is my secret. Don't tell anyone. You wouldn't want the young master to be in danger, right?" Actually, Jiang Yifeng said this on purpose. There was no danger. He was just teasing these servants. After that, Jiang Yifeng didn't bother with them anymore. However, he didn't continue flying. Instead, he landed and walked out of the courtyard. It had been a long time since he visited a pleasure house to listen to music, so Jiang Yifeng decided to relax today. But when Jiang Yifeng arrived at the Spring Blossom Pavilion, he found it wasn't open today and was under renovation. In the end, he had to return home disappointed. But when Jiang Yifeng returned to his small courtyard, his expression changed. Blood? Why was there such a strong smell of blood in his courtyard? Jiang Yifeng became alert. He quickly used his divine sense to investigate the situation in the courtyard. He wasn't worried about his own safety. Given his current strength, it was hard for anyone in the southern regions to harm him. But this was within the Jiang family mansion. He was concerned that a battle might affect the Jiang family members. After probing, Jiang Yifeng didn't find any traces of cultivators. But he saw something even more unbelievable. He saw Little Peach holding a pair of scissors, curled up in a corner of the courtyard. Beside Little Peach were the corpses of two servants. Just as Jiang Yifeng was about to return to the courtyard to question Little Peach about what had happened, he saw Little Peach, with tears streaming down her face, looking at his room. She murmured, "Young master, goodbye." Then she raised the scissors to her neck. Clang! The scissors fell to the ground. Little Peach didn't succeed in committing suicide, as Jiang Yifeng had shot a burst of spiritual energy from afar, stopping her in time. "Little Peach, what happened?" Jiang Yifeng appeared in front of Little Peach in an instant, asking with a puzzled expression. Seeing the young master, Little Peach was initially delighted, but her face quickly turned sorrowful. She murmured, "Young master, they wouldn't listen to you and kept discussing how you could fly, so I..." Hearing Little Peach's words, Jiang Yifeng frowned. If that was the case, then Little Peach had killed those servants. Jiang Yifeng didn't think it was a big deal. After all, disloyal servants who could betray him at any moment weren't worth keeping around. He hadn't silenced them before, merely giving them a chance. But why did Little Peach want to kill herself? Before Jiang Yifeng could ask, Little Peach continued, choking on her words. I also always wanted to share with others that my young master could fly. I was afraid I couldn't hold it in. Young master, I heard that only the dead can keep secrets, so... Boo-hoo. Hearing Little Peach's words, Jiang Yifeng couldn't help but find it both amusing and exasperating. What a silly girl. Jiang Yifeng understood Little Peach's feelings. When someone close to you achieves something great, who wouldn't want to show off? But he had strictly forbidden her from spreading the word. He even said that it would be dangerous for him if the news got out. So this girl took it too literally. In the end, it was just a casual remark from him that led to this bloodshed. Jiang Yifeng rubbed Little Peach's head and sighed. It's okay, young master trusts you, Little Peach. Afterward, Jiang Yifeng called for the butler, Jiang Defu, to have the bodies of the dead servants taken away and buried. Jiang Defu didn't ask about the cause of their deaths. After all, in this society, the death of servants in their master's house wasn't considered a big deal. Having done all this, Jiang Yifeng called Little Peach into his room. After much thought, he decided to teach Little Peach the way of cultivation. Previously, he hadn't considered this. After all, in the southern regions, cultivation wasn't necessarily a good thing. Except for cultivators like him who could improve through the simulator, others often faced significant dangers, such as encountering immortal slaves. But today's events made Jiang Yifeng think that perhaps this girl was more suited for cultivation than he was, because she was ruthless enough to kill without hesitation. Indeed, Jiang Yifeng didn't resent Little Peach for killing the other two servants. After all, she did it for him, following his orders. She was just a bit too obedient. Jiang Yifeng seriously asked Little Peach if she was willing to cultivate. Although Jiang Yifeng was a half-baked cultivator and couldn't test for spiritual roots, he could sense spiritual energy. Based on the distribution of spiritual energy around Little Peach, he knew she had the talent for cultivation. Hearing that the young master was willing to teach her the way of cultivation, Little Peach was naturally overjoyed and couldn't refuse. Jiang Yifeng wasn't surprised by Little Peach's response. He just became more serious. He began to explain the consequences of cultivation and the existence of the immortal arrival sect. After finishing, he asked Little Peach once more if she was still willing to cultivate. After much consideration, Little Peach said, "Young master, I am willing." But Jiang Yifeng didn't know that Little Peach was thinking, so the young master has been through so much hardship and has so many enemies. I must work hard to cultivate and help him in the future. Then, Jiang Yifeng taught Little Peach the devouring spirit art, left some spirit stone resources, and gave her a breath-concealing talisman. At this point, the breath-concealing talisman was no longer effective for Jiang Yifeng. His cultivation level had surpassed what the talisman could conceal. But it didn't matter anymore. After all, Jiang Yifeng's current strength was beyond the detection of ordinary immortal slaves. However, Jiang Yifeng couldn't have imagined how much this investment in Little Peach would benefit him in the future. After finishing everything, Jiang Yifeng stopped worrying about Little Peach. Instead, he began to set up formations around the Jiang family mansion. He had grown dissatisfied with the 8th grade formation he had set up before. This time, he wanted to set up a 9th grade defensive formation. Once this formation was in place, if his identity as a cultivator were ever exposed, the people within the Jiang family mansion would be protected and safe. In fact, Jiang Yifeng had considered teaching his father, Jiang Fushan, how to cultivate. But after thinking it over, he decided against it. His father had too many secrets. He was worried that one wrong move could ruin everything. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang Yifeng's 9th grade defensive formation was still incomplete. But he stopped his work. Currently, there was no immediate danger in reality. Simulation was still the most important thing. Returning to his room, Jiang Yifeng silently recited, "Start simulation." Consuming 1 simulation attempt. Remaining attempts, 0. Drawing purple talent consumes 100 origin values. Probabilistic drawing of orange talent consumes 1000 origin values. Please choose. Choose probabilistic orange talent drawing. Ding. 1000 origin values deducted, talent being randomly drawn, remaining origin values. Congratulations, host has obtained orange talent, Mortal Domain. Mortal Domain, upon activation, it forcibly lowers the cultivation level of both the enemy and oneself to that of a mortal. Note: this talent can be ignored by those at the Great Principal Golden Immortal Realm and above. Use with caution. Detected that the host's knowledge is extremely limited. Friendly reminder: cultivation levels above Tribulation Crossing are Mortal Immortal, Earth Immortal, Heaven Immortal, True Immortal, Mystic Immortal, Golden Immortal, Supreme Unity Golden Immortal, Great Principal Golden Immortal, Quasi-Saint, Saint. Note: the realms are borrowed, but actual strength is based on this book. Seeing this, Jiang Yifeng couldn't help but roll his eyes. He muttered, "Who are you calling ignorant?" However, Jiang Yifeng's heart was in turmoil. He hadn't expected so many realms beyond Tribulation Crossing. Now, he understood the position of mystic immortals in the immortal realm. After all, he knew that the mystic turtle of the Endless Sea was at the mystic immortal realm. Now it seemed that its strength in the immortal realm was not low. But such an existence was casually suppressed by a powerful being from the immortal realm and made to guard a corner of the ceiling formation in the Endless Sea of the southern regions. So what realm were these powerful beings from the immortal realm? Thinking of this, Jiang Yifeng felt an immense pressure. He thought to himself, with such powerful enemies, I must be even more cautious. Until I have matching strength, I must not let those powerful beings from the immortal realm discover me. While Jiang Yifeng was lost in thought, the simulator continued to display information. Ding, host has obtained a one-time talent. Come here. Come here. Designate a target and call their true name to forcibly bring them to your side. Note: the target's strength must be below the Saint realm and within the same space-time. Talent pool: Thunderfire True Spiritual Root, Absolute Rationality. Ding, would you like to choose a talent from the talent pool to carry? Looking at the information from the simulator, Jiang Yifeng fell into deep thought. This talent seemed quite powerful. But how should he use it? For a moment, Jiang Yifeng felt a headache. Finally, he gritted his teeth and silently recited, I choose to carry absolute rationality. Jiang Yifeng admitted that sometimes he wasn't as smart as his rational self. He hadn't yet figured out how to use this new talent. So he decided to let absolute rationality make the judgment. However, Jiang Yifeng hoped that absolute rationality wouldn't do anything too extreme. Otherwise, he would never use this talent again. After Jiang Yifeng made his choice, the simulation officially began. Simulation number 27 begins. With absolute rationality, you quickly realize you are in a simulation. You do not act rashly but instead begin to recall the abilities of this talent. Various possibilities start to flood your mind. The one-time talent Come Here is a control ability. If used well, it might change your fate. You think, what if you let your father Jiang Fushan cross the tribulation to become an immortal, attract the powerful beings from the immortal realm, and then pull Bai Moyu over to take the hit? What would happen? But soon, you shake your head, dismissing this idea, because you doubt whether this talent would even work on Bai Moyu. After all, Bai Moyu could see the fragments of the heavenly Tao on you. And according to your understanding, the fragments of the heavenly Tao should refer to your talents. After all, the only special things about you are your talents and the simulator. You think the simulator is unlikely, as you remember Bai Moyu mentioned multiple fragments of the heavenly Tao. The simulator is just one, which doesn't meet this condition. So, would someone who can see the fragments of the heavenly Tao on you, essentially seeing through your talents, be controlled by your talent? The chances are slim. Of course, you also know that talents are ranked, and in previous simulations, Bai Moyu saw through your talents. But those talents were at most of the orange level. And this one-time talent, you believe, surpasses the orange level, as it can affect targets with a cultivation level higher than the mortal domain of orange talents. So, you're not sure if this one-time talent would work on Bai Moyu. But regardless, such an attempt is too risky. If it doesn't work, you'd be digging your own grave. And if it does work, can Bai Moyu, a powerful figure, resist the many powerful beings of the immortal realm? Clearly not, otherwise, he wouldn't be hiding. You think that doing so would only harm Baimoyu without benefiting you at all. A classic lose-lose situation. In the end, you decide that the talent come here should be used in conjunction with specific circumstances. After all, a one-time talent should be used at the most critical moment. For now, you can't plan this talent very well. Then, you recall the orange talent Mortal Domain, which is clearly a combat talent. It seems useful, but you think it's not enough to change your fate. After all, its usage is limited to those below the Great Principal Golden Immortal level. You don't know how many strong beings above the Great Principal Golden Immortal level exist in the immortal realm. But those powerful beings are certainly stronger than this level. As for the reason, you also refer to Baimoyu. Baimoyu could see through your talents before, so at least the orange talents you had at that time posed no threat to someone of his level. If orange talents were a threat to powerful beings, Baimoyu would have focused on nurturing or using you in that simulation instead of sending you back to the southern regions for poison cultivation. You think that his decision to send you back to the southern regions for poison cultivation proves that your talents at that time were not enough to threaten powerful beings. Thus, you can deduce that the orange level talent Mortal Domain is not enough to affect powerful beings. This also leads you to conclude that the cultivation level of powerful beings is above the Great Principal Golden Immortal level. In fact, besides reasoning based on Baimoyu's strength, you have another thought. That is, if powerful beings can shatter the heavenly Tao of the Nine Mystic Realm in their battles, would they fear the fragments of the heavenly Tao from the Nine Mystic Realm? Clearly not. So, it's normal that your current talents don't work on them. You wonder if all the talents in the simulation are fragments of the heavenly Tao from the Nine Mystic Realm? If so, how could these talents possibly contend with those powerful beings? After all, if the complete heavenly Tao can be shattered, the pieced-together fragments would be even weaker. Suddenly, you laugh at yourself and mutter, thinking too much. You realize that you've been overthinking about talents and almost fell into a trap. Whether the talents in the simulator are fragments of the heavenly Tao from the Nine Mystic Realm is not important at all. After all, the greatest function of the simulator is not the talents, but its ability to provide infinite possibilities for you to explore solutions and enhance your strength. With this in mind, you stop thinking about how to use talents to deal with someone. Instead, you start recalling various situations from previous simulations. You want to know if there are any clues you missed without absolute rationality. In reality, Jiang Yifeng's lips curl into a smile as he mutters to himself, "Hey, there's no way I missed anything." In those simulations without absolute rationality, Jiang Yifeng believes that while he may not have been perfect, he had definitely organized every clue. He is quite confident about this. He even scoffs internally. Absolute rationality doesn't mean absolute intelligence. It's the same brain, you're just not influenced by external factors. What more could you possibly do? With this thought, Jiang Yifeng eagerly looks at the simulator. He now just wants to see his rational self get proven wrong. You recall past experiences and the simulation displays. After recalling, you slowly close your eyes and fall into deep thought. After a long time, you slowly shake your head, realizing you missed just a tiny bit. You didn't think about where your father's immortal Tao inheritance came from. You didn't consider who the lady in red crossing the tribulation to become an immortal was. You didn't think about why the demonic dragon had a way to cross the tribulation but didn't become an immortal. You didn't think about whether the other demonic beasts guarding the area had the same potential but faced their own issues, preventing or deterring them from crossing the tribulation. You didn't consider what the powerful beings of the immortal realm extracted from the demonic dragon. Also, knowing that the founder of the Heavenly Profound Temple was a disciple of someone like Baimoyu, you didn't think about whether he really died? Would such a powerful disciple die under heavenly thunder? Does the Heavenly Profound Temple have deeper secrets? Baioxu lost her memory and came to the southern regions to find her senior brother. Is it really just out of longing and wanting to see him? A broken bar. You sigh, realizing that without absolute rationality, even though you discovered many clues, you couldn't grasp them in reality. Jiang Yifeng's face turned dark instantly upon seeing this. Did I miss so many clues? He murmured to himself, somewhat puzzled. After a long while, Jiang Yifeng stubbornly muttered, HMPH, I thought of it, just didn't say it out loud. Yes, that's it. He's a low-key person, unlike the version of himself with absolute rationality, who loves to show off. However, since he thought of it, he didn't know why he still picked up pen and paper to record the issues displayed on the simulator. After Jiang Yifeng finished jotting down all the problems shown on the simulator, he smiled smugly. Ha, now who dares to say I didn't think of it? But he seemed to have overlooked the ellipses. Jiang Yifeng continued to look at the simulator. After pondering for a moment, you picked up pen and paper from the nearby table and started writing. Time passed bit by bit. When you stopped writing, you looked up at the sky and said. You stood there for a long time, then walked towards what you had just written. Then, you froze in place. It seems there was a flaw in your plan. The next day, you stayed in the Jiang family mansion and did not go out. You came to the paper you wrote on and muttered. After a long time, you looked at the unchanged paper and frowned. On the third day, after getting up, you came to the paper again and muttered. In reality, Jiang Yifeng finally sensed something was wrong. The simulator had shown 3 times in a row. What was it that couldn't be said? Or had the version of himself in the simulator discovered something, and the simulator was preventing him from knowing? Suddenly, Jiang Yifeng recalled that when his version with absolute rationality had told him to do a deep simulation, he had also looked up at the sky. Could it be that he needed to go in himself? No matter, it's worth a try. Jiang Yifeng silently chanted, start deep simulation for 1 day. He wasn't sure if he needed to go in himself, so he decided to try a 1-day deep simulation first. If it was important, he could extend the duration of the deep simulation later. However, this time, after Jiang Yifeng called out to start the deep simulation, he didn't immediately enter the simulation. The simulator seemed to be stuck. A full minute later, the electronic voice of the simulator slowly sounded. Ding, starting deep simulation for 1 day, deducting 24 origin values, remaining origin values. Instantly, Jiang Yifeng's consciousness entered the simulation. At this moment, he also had the blessing of absolute rationality. He immediately understood that his decision to enter the deep simulation was correct. He walked towards the paper filled with words left from the previous text simulation. Looking at the notes on the paper, they were all the issues summarized earlier. Besides the text displayed on the simulator, there were a few more lines at the bottom that hadn't been shown before. Why is my talent a fragment of the heavenly Tao of the 9 mystic realm? Is the simulator also plundering fragments of the heavenly Tao of the 9 mystic realm? Or is it collaborating with the heavenly Tao of the 9 mystic realm? And the talents given in recent simulations are too good. Whether it's drawn talents or one-time talents, they're excessively good. Completely different from before. This is very abnormal. I suspect the simulator is in a hurry, pushing me to grow quickly. Does it have self-awareness, or is someone controlling it from behind? Will I become a puppet of the simulator? Or am I also someone's pawn? Of course, these are not important. The most important question is why the simulator is in a hurry. What could make the simulator anxious? Alert! Alert! Seeing this, the current Jiang Yifeng, with absolute rationality, have no emotional fluctuations. He just memorized everything and then fell into deep thought. These previously unseen notes were all about the simulator. In many aspects, Jiang Yifeng could now understand. However, he felt that some aspects might still be wrong. For example, does the simulator have consciousness, or is someone controlling it from behind? Will he become a puppet of the simulator, or is he someone's pawn? These questions, Jiang Yifeng felt, needed further consideration. After all, he was currently in a deep simulation. If the simulator had consciousness and wanted to turn him into a puppet, it could directly intervene and prevent him from entering the deep simulation. That way, he wouldn't see the paper with potential issues about the simulator. Therefore, Jiang Yifeng now felt that the simulator might have consciousness, or someone might be controlling it from behind. But for now, it seemed harmless to him. Or the simulator had a set of fixed rules. Its consciousness, or the person controlling it, couldn't violate these rules. Thinking of this, Jiang Yifeng couldn't help but smile slightly. Since that was the case, at least he wasn't at an absolute disadvantage. However, the reason for the simulator's urgency was something Jiang Yifeng felt needed careful consideration. After all, no matter how he looked at it, he and the simulator were on the same side for now. Even if the simulator had issues, that would be a problem for later. Thinking of this, he suddenly chuckled, then let's have some fun. After that, Jiang Yifeng didn't exit immediately after getting the information as he had initially planned when entering the deep simulation. Instead, he silently chanted, "Simulator, extend deep simulation time to 50 years." He felt that since he now had memory and absolute rationality, it was a great opportunity to investigate the various matters. One day was too short. So, he wanted to try extending the deep simulation time. However, after a long while, the simulator remained unresponsive. Jiang Yifeng frowned. He thought to himself, is it the simulator's rule? Can't extend deep simulation time directly within the simulation? Or is the simulator intervening? It doesn't want me to solve problems through absolute rationality. Without enough clues, Jiang Yifeng couldn't figure it out at the moment. But he felt it was more likely to be the simulator's rule. After all, if it wanted to intervene, it would have been easier to do so before he entered the deep simulation. Since he couldn't extend the deep simulation time, one day wasn't enough to do much. So Jiang Yifeng silently chanted, "Exit deep simulation." Ding! Deep simulation ended. Jiang Yifeng instantly returned to reality. Recalling the events in the deep simulation, Jiang Yifeng felt a bit scared. He hadn't expected the simulator to have so many potential threats. He hadn't thought in that direction before. And the simulator seemed anxious. It wanted him to grow quickly. This was something Jiang Yifeng hadn't noticed before. But thinking about it now, indeed, the recent talents were significantly stronger than before. Does this mean that the potential threat not only endangered him but might also threaten the simulator? What a headache! Jiang Yifeng rubbed his forehead, forcing himself to calm down. He was torn about whether to continue the deep simulation. According to absolute rationality, if he carried absolute rationality into the deep simulation, he could uncover more clues that he usually couldn't notice. In the end, Jiang Yifeng shook his head. He didn't continue the deep simulation. He felt he needed to digest the information first.